Nope. Okay. Well, with that, I will look to the city clerk to start calling the speakers.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We have some speakers that are in need of translation services, so I'll start calling them first. First, 67, Sulma Franco, followed by... She's outside, I'll go grab her. Okay. Kendi Reyes, Kayla Estevez, Salvador Robles, Minor Anthonez.
Can you call the names one more time just to make sure?
Yes. Sulma Franco, Kendi Reyes, Kayla Estevez, Salvador Robles, Minor Antinez. Okay, I'm going to keep going to remote speakers now. Marina Roberts.
Hi, I'm a resident of D4 testifying on behalf of Workers' Defense Action Fund and our membership of over 6,200 immigrant workers. Immigrant Austinites are in danger and face escalating attacks, regardless of their status. In this political landscape, fighting back requires us to think in terms of systems. How can we pass policies that keep immigrants safe by making the work of targeting them harder to do? This vote is a critical battle in that fight. Unscrupulous, profit-motivated data brokers like Flock collect troves of sensitive information about the places a person regularly visits, the school their children attend, their workplace, their place of worship, their home. For immigrants, this information is available on demand to ICE because of the city's interpretation of SB4. Even if APD deleted the data after 3 minutes, Flock would retain the data and the ability to sell it or otherwise provide it to ICE. Right now, tech billionaires are hard at work crafting systems that notify ICE whenever undocumented folks appear in ALPR systems, so ICE can access real-time location data for the people they're seeking to deport. Federal and state agencies are using surveillance tech to target immigrants in ways we haven't seen before, and it is fundamentally unknowable how severe this landscape will become for our immigrant neighbors. I see my council member hard at work trying to craft a contract with guardrails, but no guardrails will ever be enough to fully prevent ICE from accessing this data once it is collected. We will pay for the precious few stolen cars recovered in separated families, in mothers and fathers who may never see their children again, in workers on whose labor we rely to make Austin what it is, in beloved neighbors, in coworkers and friends. I believe council aims to stand with immigrants. In this moment, we need your foresight and we need you to put human life over property. Vote down this contract. Thank you.
Laura Carbonell.
Hi, good morning. I'm a native Austinite, and I also live in District 9. I work in the tech sector, and I wanted to just say a few things. When you approved this pilot, we didn't have an administration who ignores the rule of law, the rights of citizens, and due process. When you approved this pilot, we didn't have a president who is vindictive and has gone after his opponents with every weapon he can muster. When you approved this pilot, we didn't see people being sent off to prisons in other countries without due process. When you approved this pilot, there wasn't a contract with Palantir, which just was announced a week ago, to build a master government database to track all Americans. Things have changed. I want you to please take this into consideration when you're voting on Thursday. And you may think, well, you know, we can vote them out. But even if we didn't have to worry about all these things, there's reasons to be concerned about mass surveillance and relying on for-profit companies. They are not interested in the health of our communities. As a content manager in the tech industry, I've seen promises from software vendors for features and customization that never materializes. I know you have been or may have been promised many things by these companies when it comes to data security, but according to the experts, there are no guarantees and there are no guardrails that will protect everyone. Finally, just as a taxpayer,
Thank you. Your time has expired.
I would like to, oh, okay, thank you.
Rachel Shannon.
Good morning, Council. I'm Rachel Shannon, a resident of District 1, and I'm here to urge you to vote no on item 67. I spoke up about ALPRs when this was voted on in September 22, and I'm here to speak out again because it's ever more clear that when it comes to digital data, privacy is a momentary experience at best. It's something that no one can guarantee, especially a private company. The only data that can never be leaked or misused is the data that was never captured in the first place. There were warnings back in 2022 about ALPRs being weaponized against people seeking abortions. And just this past week, we learned of how law enforcement in Texas used Flock to perform a nationwide search of 83,000 ALPR cameras while looking for a woman who had an abortion. Johnson County reports have been mixed about why they were looking for this woman, but the evidence stands, as it has before, that the only safe data is that is not collected. The reality is, once data is collected, it can be accessed, extended, shared, hacked, subpoenaed, or abused, and eventually it will be. The risks for those already politically targeted are not theoretical, they're happening. Unfortunately, when abuse happens, there's no meaningful recourse, and the limited and purported good here does not outweigh the risk to our human and constitutional rights. No deletion policy can undo a leak. No audit can untrack a person who never should have been surveilled in the first place. A hard truth is that surveillance in 2025 too often isn't actually about benefiting society or protecting people, but enforcing the political goals of those in power. At one time, Austin boasted itself as a sanctuary city for immigrants, reproductive rights, and transgender residents, all of which are obviously under egregious scrutiny in our state. Austin's continuing support for surveillance that stands to criminalize all these people
Thank you. Your time has
is
expired.
at odds with this claim. Thank you.
I'll return to in person. I believe that Sulma Franco is here, Kendi Reyes, and Minor Atinez.
Ok, voy a leer por párrafo así. Okay. Buenos días, concejales. Mi nombre es Sulma Franco y resido en el Distrito 2.
Good morning, council members. My name is Sulma Franco and I reside in District 2.
Estoy aquí con mis compañeros para hacerles ver todo el temor que sentimos día a día, ya que nuestra comunidad de color inmigrante ha sido atacada drásticamente.
I'm here with all my community members to let you know, like, all the fear that we feel every day because our color community and immigrants have been attacked drastically.
Con todas estas leyes de este mandato nos sentimos vigilados todo el tiempo. No podemos salir a trabajar o llevar a nuestros hijos a la escuela porque no sabemos si un día regresaremos a casa bien.
With all the laws and the regulation of this current government, we are always fearful of going to work or taking our children to school because we never know if we're going to come back home.
Sabemos que APD está obligado legalmente a compartir datos con ICE y las agencias federales a través del Centro de Fusión ARIC.
We know that APD is legally bound to share data with ICE and other federal agencies through the Center Fusion ARIC.
Al compartir estos datos sabemos que muchas de nuestras familias serán separadas o no sabremos qué pasará con ellos.
When they share this data, we know that our family are going to be separated and we're not going to know what's going to happen to them.
Austin siempre se ha caracterizado por ser una ciudad progresista y en crecimiento, y sabemos que muchas de nuestras familias han contribuido al desarrollo de esta ciudad.
Austin has always been a progressive city, and is also a sanctuary city. And everything that is a progress in this city, we have contributed to the progress.
Austin se ha caracterizado siendo un lugar santuario y deseamos que realmente lo sea. Y ustedes tienen ahora el poder para decidir que sea así.
Austin has always been a sanctuary city, and we know that this is what we wish that it continues to be, and you have the power to decide that this continues.
Es por eso que les pedimos que voten no a la lectura de placas, que voten no a la sobrevigilancia.
That's why we ask you to vote no to the reading data from the license plates, vote no to all hypervigilance in our community.
Le pedimos que voten a favor de nuestra comunidad, que voten para dar alivio a nuestra comunidad diciendo no a la lectura de placas.
Please vote in favor of our community and vote no against reading the license plates.
Los quiero invitar que por favor creen fondos para defender casos migratorios.
I want to invite you to create funds to defend migration cases.
Inviertan en casas para todas las personas sin hogar.
Invest in houses for everybody that has no home.
Inviertan en la salud mental.
Invest in mental health.
Inviertan en las escuelas, en crear programas para jóvenes, que ellos son el futuro del mañana.
Invest in schools and in programs that can defend the youth and the teens because they are the future of our tomorrow.
Voten no y voten sí a las comunidades para que podamos vivir con dignidad y justicia.
Vote no in item 67 and vote yes in favor of the community so we can live with justice and dignity.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Hola, mi nombre es Candy Reyes. Hola, mi nombre es Candy Reyes, tengo 13 años, estoy aquí con el permiso de mi mamá. Vine para levantar la voz en nombre de los jóvenes y niños que han sido separados de su familia. Pertenezco al Distrito 4, soy estudiante de secundaria. Les pido que voten no al artículo 67. A mi corta edad comprendo que esto impactará a mi comunidad y familia de una manera negativa, promoverá el racismo y discriminación. Por ejemplo, mi familia cuando miran a los policías en lugar de sentirse seguros, tienen miedo.
Okay. Hello, my name is Candy Reyes. I'm 13 years old. I'm here with my mom's permission to speak to you. I came to raise my voice in favor of the teens and children that have been separated from their families. I live in District 4. I'm a middle school student. I'm asking you to vote no for item 67. At my short age, I understand that this will impact my family, my community in a very negative way. It will promote racism, it will promote discrimination. For example, my family, every time when they go out, when they see the cops, instead of feeling safe, they feel fear.
La vigilancia masiva no es solo eficiente, sino peligrosa. Los datos también se comparten con el Departamento de ICE. Esto solo aumentan más arrestos en personas que solo vienen a buscar una mejor vida. Es una de las tantas razones por las cuales les pido votar no. Los recursos deberían invertirse en ayudar a personas sin hogar, salud mental, en áreas recreativas para niños y jóvenes tomando en cuenta su futuro. Ayudar a mejorar las escuelas, nuevos programas donde podamos desarrollarnos mejor.
This massive hypervigilance is not only inefficient, but is dangerous. The data is going to be also shared with the Department of ICE, and this is going to increase all the arrests for people that only come here to look for a better life opportunity. This is only one of the many reasons that I ask you to vote no for item 67. And the resources you have, you should invest them in other things like helping people that are homeless, mental health, in recreation areas for children and teens, and taking in consideration their future. Help build better schools, better programs in the ones that we can develop better.
En crear ambientes seguros, hablo por mí y por otros jóvenes que no pudieron hacerlo. Espero en Dios mi voz sea escuchada y la de muchos otros. Tenemos miedo a las nuevas tácticas crueles impulsadas por esta administración. También les pido a más jóvenes que nos apoyen. Los recursos deberían invertirse en nosotros y niños que somos el futuro del país. Dios los bendiga y gracias.
You should invest in creating environments that are safe. I'm speaking here for me, but also for other teens that cannot come here to do it. I trust in God that my voice is listened and the voices of many others. We are feared of this administration and these cruel tactics that they're promoted for this current administration. Please, I ask you that you can support the young people, the teens, that all your resources are invested in us, and we are the future. Thank you, and God bless you.
Okay. Hola, buenos días. Me llamo Minor, resido en el Distrito 6. Estoy aquí porque quiero motivar a todos los concejales a que apoyen a la comunidad de color e inmigrante.
Hello, my name is Minor, and I'm living District 6. I'm here to invite all the council members to support the community of color and the immigrants.
Ustedes hoy tienen el poder y la oportunidad de dar protección a nuestra comunidad. La seguridad no solo debería ser cámaras.
You have the power to protect the community, and you have the power to make the community better. The security is not only to be in cameras.
La seguridad sería invertir en talleres para jóvenes, invertir en escuelas, invertir en parques, invertir en hospitales.
Security should be investing in young people, investing in workshops for young people, in parks, investing in schools, investing in hospitals.
Utilicen el dinero para hacer crecer a nuestra comunidad trabajadora y luchen por nosotros.
Use the money to make grow our community, our workers, and please fight for us.
Apoyen a que nuestra comunidad inmigrante se sienta segura en una ciudad tan bonita como es Austin.
Please help our immigrant community to feel safe and to live in a beautiful city like it is Austin.
Por favor, les pido que voten a la lectura, no votar a la lectura de placa y sí a la comunidad. Gracias.
Please, I ask you to vote no to the reading the license plates for item 67, and please vote yes for the community. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem. While we have our translator here, can the young man who just spoke, I'd like him to connect with our office. I'm the council member for D6, where he's a constituent, and I'm going to have one of my staff come out. Would you mind just letting him know?
Yes, of course.
Continuing with in-person comment, Mo Cortez, Sanjay Ravi, Annette Price. Yeah, if you hear your name, please come on down and just state your name into the record at the podium.
Oh, just go ahead and come on down. Yep.
Just state your name, please.
I'm Sanjay. Yeah. So, one sec. So I'm here to speak against ALPR, obviously. I know we're going to get some testimony today from some feds or some cops or whatever, and they're going to come here with some emotional stories of how, like, you know, someone was raped and we have to catch them. I just want to mention here, a lot of people have already mentioned how they live in fear of ICE and the police. And the reason they say that is because we all intrinsically understand that the police do not exist to protect and serve the people. Anecdotally, we all know that when we call the police, and I can give you an anecdotal example myself, I called 911 because someone hit and ran when they hit my car. They didn't even show up. Austin PD didn't even show up. They don't care about when we're harmed. A lot of people here can attest the same thing. immigrant communities cannot even call the police. You call the police, 90% of rape cases are unsolved, 40% of murders get away. And if you're robbed, police don't do anything. They don't do that SWAT raid intensive efforts that you think they do in Hollywood movies to protect you. Here's the reality. If you read a history book and look at precedent, police and the state exist to protect the state and their corporate cronies. They will put the law so heavily on people who slightly violate the government or corporate's property because they exist for their own control. They are stormtroopers for the state. Everyone here, all the people that are going to testify against this, they intrinsically know the police do not exist to keep us safe. Their resources are much more allocated in arresting political prisoners like Mahmoud Khalil. You speak out against Palestine, the police will throw charges at you. I went to a hearing of a dude who was arrested for resisting arrest. That was his own charge, and they were trying to give him 1 year of house arrest for that. They put the law down so hard on people, anyone who's a threat to the state, but they don't do jack when people are actually harmed, because we all intrinsically know the Hollywood fantasy of them arresting murderers and thieves on our behalf is a lie. They exist to protect the government and the state's control and power. So we are here to testify against ALPR because we know intrinsically it's used for surveillance. It's used to fine us excessively. They're going to put ridiculous fines on us and make us live in fear. And they're going to arrest anyone who's a threat to the state. Even if we have free speech, they'll find any technicality to put us in jail. So please vote against ALPR. It's a threat to our community, and they do not protect and serve us. Thank you.
Good morning, y'all. I'm Mo Cortez. I'm an intersex and trans policy organizer from Grassroots Leadership, Texas Advocates for Justice. I work in District 4. I'm asking you to vote no on number 67. Automatic license plate readers are a national security risk. Hacks have become so commonplace in our society. They've even stolen our social security numbers. And one thing I want you to remember is that these ALPRs collect data. They're collecting customs, patterns, and practices of how people drive, and that data is available from data miners, right? So that means they can look into anybody, not just immigrants, families, and ourselves, and trans people and intersex people who need care, but also even y'all. What if this weaponized against y'all or any of your family? This ALPRs are a liability. If council decides to continue with ALPRs, they're choosing to violate all of our Fourth Amendment rights. I ask you to vote no on 67. Thank you.
Good day. My name is Annette Price. I am here to represent myself in District 1 and also Grassroots Leadership. I want y'all to look closely at this picture. Do y'all see what is happening here? I am here to vote no against 67, and for this very reason. I am in District 1, and this is to you, Harper Madison. Please stop continuing to willingly give my information out on this data collection. I am sure my car has been scanned in this time frame that you all have been watching and analyzing this program. I'm sure my data is now out there. Continuing to allow this to move forward will not protect me. It will not protect you. It will not protect this baby in this street. I'm asking y'all to vote no for this, for my protection. There is no such thing as safeguards put in place to protect my identity and my information. Breaches happen all the time. You cannot protect that. You can only protect me by not allowing this to continue in the first place. Thank you.
Darnell Casanya, Chantel Pridgen, Reese Armstrong, Bob Leibel. If your name's been called, go ahead and come down, and then just state your name into the microphone at the podium.
Hello, council members. My name is Reese Armstrong. I am here today to speak against the renewal of the automated license plate reader program. This program represents an imminent security threat to Austinites and your constituents by enabling Gestapo-like ICE kidnappings. We know this because it's my understanding that the contractor of this program, Flock, has an active contract with ICE for intelligence information. Outside of that, the mass surveillance of all vehicles traveling within the city of Austin is dystopian and concerning. People have a right to privacy, and that includes the right to travel without being tracked. The possibility of solving a few more crimes is not worth putting your constituents in imminent danger of being kidnapped and enabling mass surveillance. Do not renew this program. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, my name is Bob Leibel. I'm a District 7 resident. I'm here representing myself, but I've worked on criminal justice and immigration issues for the last 20 years. I want to make 2 points in relation to the ALPR contract. I think the most urgent is about the guardrails conversation. I think perhaps in a different political environment, it's a reasonable conversation to have. But I think that in this administration, the idea that we're going to have effective guardrails has been disproven time and time again already in the first 4 months of this Trump term. As some examples, ICE has deployed masked, unidentified men to schools, courthouses, and hospitals, something that was against ICE policy previously. In Harris County, ICE requested data of every person cited for driving without a license, including their address and car, make, and model. ICE has commandeered Postal Service data and commandeered Postal Service police for their mass deportation effort. ICE is posed as municipal utility workers in cities around the country in order to have closer access to immigrant communities for mass deportation. ICE is now using IRS data to track down immigrants for the mass deportation program, something that was, I'm sure we have all recommended that people pay their taxes regardless of their immigration status in the past, and now that's being weaponized against people. And this is all before SB 8 goes into effect, which mandates closer ICE collaboration in every county across Texas, and before the reconciliation bill goes into effect. And the reconciliation bill, which has already passed the House, doubles DHS spending and quadruples ICE detention budgets. So we're talking about much more resources that ICE is going to have.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Kevin Welch, Susana Carranza, Miriam Durantes, Sofia Mirto.
Go ahead. If your name has been called, please step to the podium and state your name.
Dear Austin City Council members, many of you know me at this point. My name is Kevin Welch, District 8 resident, current president of the board at EFF Austin, a digital civil liberties advocacy group. Given that item 67, despite continuing to call this a pilot program, ultimately is a full reauthorization of the program with no set end date, I must urge all of you to vote no on this, as given the data that we have now, there's no defensible way to continue this program. This program scanned 75 million license plates, a staggering number, and yet the success rate of locating persons of interest was less than 0.02%. We also have learned that despite the guardrails in place, our contract has no legal force behind it, and the data that wasn't supposed to have been shared has been shared, putting our citizens at risk. Multiple data sharing requests were made that our own police department wasn't even aware of, and now we learn that 25% of ALPR searches were done without a legitimate documented purpose in compliance with Council's resolution. And beyond the specifics of this program, I urge you all to really deeply and truly think about the world we are building with our technology, a world powered by a belief that more data is always better and that all problems can be solved with more data. Much like the continued use of fossil fuels is driving our planet to a climate crisis, the mass collection of personal data by surveillance cameras, ALPRs, facial recognition tools, social media companies, AI companies, and many others has created a world where data brokers like Flock will sell you every detail of a person's life for the right price. Voters being targeted by highly detailed propaganda that plays to their biases. Politicians blackmailed over where they were Tuesday night. Democracy can't function in a world where people have been reduced to data, and that data has been centralized and weaponized. Our ALPR data only has to be leaked once, and it flows into the data broker ecosystem. An oil spill that even if we clean it up, the damage is done. Look around us. You know our democracy is under extreme threat, and you want to add fuel to that fire. No. What has cut off the data collection is source and not treat people as a bunch of numbers to be ranked, sorted, judged, and discarded. I encourage you to exercise the democratic power we've entrusted you with and vote no for all our sakes, including yours.
I'm Dr. Susan Carranza. I live in District 9, and I'm against item 67. And I thank you, Council Cadre, for opposing this. And I'm actually shocked, really shocked at all of you who are still even considering this, knowing the climate that we are in at now, our federal government, our state government, and all the concerns about SB8 and required agreements with ICE. But also, as I agree with all my fellow tech folks, I work a career with instrumentation and data collection. And you have no idea how much information you can extract by just combining a few databases, even if that was not the original intention of a particular database. You really have no idea, once data is out there, even for a brief second, if somebody grabs it, even if they were not authorized, the data is there forever. It's like there is no amount of guardrails and a piece of paper that's going to stop that. And do you want to risk that, knowing folks like organizations like Doge, or official organizations like Doge are out there poking at our social security data? What do you think they're going to do when they have an opportunity to go look at where we go? And besides all our immigrant communities, there is also the risk of women seeking abortion. There is also the risk of protesters being targeted. There is also the risk of any elected officials who don't agree with the federal and state government being targeted. There is also the risk for anybody who disagrees or says anything publicly to be targeted. And if you want to kind of make it so it's easier for them to track, why? Please oppose this.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
Good morning, y'all. I got 2 minutes, so I'll keep it brief. This is a pre-warrant data collection of people that have done nothing wrong with no probable cause. So just to be super clear, we do not have a constitutional mandate to go after citizens, residents, immigrants, women. It's not okay to be collecting this data because, as people have said very correctly, any data collection, you cannot prevent what happens to that data later. You can put in a piece of paper and guardrails. The Proud Boys don't care about a piece of paper. The KKK, when trying to get ahead of this data, they don't care what y'all are trying to prevent. They only care if they can access it. And if you collect it, they're going to be able to access it, right? Another thing, California keeps getting sued by the ACLU as they make the point over and over and over, that this, because it's pre-warrant, because there's no probable cause, this is unnecessary data collection. And yeah, people have been making the point about the state government, and I saw at the Ledge over the last couple months, every single week, the state government set down a bill. They tried to pass a bill that would violate the home mandate and take away our right to self-governance. So it's incredibly important that a city like Austin that tries very hard to be a sanctuary city in a state where that is not legislatively possible, that we're actually putting our money where our mouth is and not creating unnecessary risk for our citizens and our residents. It's also a bad investment, right? We are looking down a $33 million budget deficit, which quite a few of you are not responsible for at all. But if we continue to spend money on stuff that has basically no tangible return, I don't care how many cars are returned to people like myself that live on the West Side. I care about how many people we can prevent detainment, that we can prevent families being ripped apart. And we can do that here today by not continuing.
Marl Feely, Wendy Salome, Mackenzie Ryan, Annie Compton.
Good morning. I'm Wendy Salome. I'm in District 7. I appreciate your support and how well you've spoken about this issue already, but I really want to speak to everyone here and urge you strongly to vote no. in Texas, we are used to a state authority that does not respect our civil liberties. We've already been doing this for a while. We're used to a state that has an adversarial relationship with Austin, and they've proven time and again that they want to continue to fight with us. And now our entire nation is experiencing what Texas has been experiencing for quite a while. This assault on our civil liberties, our privacy, and our right to free speech. There's no benefit to the city of Austin willingly surveilling and gathering the data. Any tiny benefit of recovering property, I think, is a horrible trade-off for what would be happening. And I think that even if the city had the best of intentions, which I trust that you do, and APD had the best of intentions, there's many reasons to doubt Flock. We have a lot of data about that. And it's almost certain that the federal and the state administrations would usurp the data that you're gathering, whether you want them to or not, and use that to punish the citizens of Austin. I not only urge you to end the ALPR contract with Flock, what I urge you is to actually go further and verify that all of the data that has been collected already has been deleted and that we are not continuing to live in fear of what has been happening. I strongly urge you all to fight to protect myself, all the people you've heard from today, and the city of Austin. The residents really are counting on you to do the right thing.
Hi, good morning. My name is Mark Philly. I'm a resident of District 8 in the northwest section of that. I've been an Austin resident for 25 years. I speak today as myself and not of an organization or employer that I'm a part of. To kind of give you an idea, so I would like all of you to vote no on this AR-46. I have been in IT, software development, and system administration for a very long time. And yes, there are ways to put guardrails on data. Very difficult. I'll give you an example. I worked with a customer once having an issue. They sent me data, and they had actually put in debug mode PII and PHI data. Totally not intended, but also that's what happened. I did inform the customer, hey, you need to fix this. They're like, oh yeah, we should do that. And I don't know if that happens in this particular case with the APL readers, but just giving you an idea of like you can have safeguards and things, but there are risks. In addition to that, I have a book for my two elected officials. So there's a book, Weapons of Math Destruction. I encourage you to read chapters 5 and 10. That's the most relevant for this section. Also, I did have a chance to read the audit report that was given in this last month. And one of the things that struck me out of it was that for about, I think it was 3/4, the police were manually getting the data down. And I mean, okay, but to me that shows that the police department that was using this isn't actually ready for this type of program at all. Like in addition to like the safety concerns and those things. And if they don't have the budget for that, I mean, I'm not sure what this program costs, but in October, November last year, you all voted to increase the police budget. So definitely consider that, and they probably want that money for that and not this. Thank you all.
Hi, my name is Mackenzie Ryan. I'm a board member at EFF Austin, a UT Law graduate with a computer science degree. I'm here today to speak about how ALPR technology is being weaponized against the very people that it claims to protect. Austin's own ALPR audit explicitly warns us, and I quote, that ALPR data could be used for investigations on matters that could include First Amendment activities, reproductive care access, and immigration status. The numerous concrete examples we have of Flock being used to target immigrants and women seeking abortion show that this is not a hypothetical. It has already happened, and it will continue to happen unless we refuse to feed data into a system that grants Flock, and I quote again, non-exclusive, worldwide, perpetual, royalty-free right and license to use and distribute this data. The contract's language is inexcusable, but that isn't the fundamental problem. Flock's entire business model depends on creating a nationwide surveillance network accessible to any law enforcement agency that's willing to pay for it. No contract provision can change this. Austin residents demanded a 7-day retention period because we understood the dangers of long-term surveillance. Yet Flock's contract makes a mockery of that democratic decision by retaining this data indefinitely, effectively rendering the privacy protections Austin had enacted meaningless. Mass surveillance infrastructure is inherently incompatible with Austin's democratic values. Once we feed data into these systems, it becomes accessible to agencies whose missions directly contradicts our city's values. Every day this contract remains, Austin remains complicit in building an infrastructure that undermines our own democratic protections. And the only way to protect us is to refuse to feed the surveillance system entirely. I urge you to vote no and show that Austin's commitment to civil liberties means more than empty privacy promises undermined by corporate fine print. Thank you.
Wow, what she said. Whew. My name is Annie Compton. I'm in District 7, and I am really concerned about automated license plate readers, as are many of my compatriots. Under normal times, I would possibly support this tool. These are not normal times. This system will be a gift to ICE and a threat to us, our neighbors, friends, and fellow Austinites. The recent audit revealed that the city's contract with Flock, the surveillance corporation with ties to Peter Thiel, allows Flock to copy the data and use it for nearly any purpose it wishes, as we have heard. Austin has a policy meant to put up guardrails. As we have heard, they are not effective, not useful, and, well, they just aren't going to work. Flock's ALPRs don't just track license plates. The company feeds Austinites data into advanced AI that allows any Flock customer to track vehicles by dense marks, even bumper stickers. This tool is already being used to surveil protesters and migrants. If you continue the ALPR program, you will be unable to prevent outside agencies from weaponizing our data to target people traveling for abortions or gender-affirming care. This isn't a problem with APD, it is a problem with the data collection, the data itself, able to be accessed by federal government and any Flock and customers in the world. Cars stolen and returned? What about stolen people? Come on, guys. It is your job to protect and defend our residents from being harassed, threatened, held, potentially jailed without due process, and deported. Vote down this contract. Thank you very much for your time.
James Clark, Jen Campbell, Daniela Silva, Chris Harris.
Good morning. My name is James Clark. I'm a resident of District 1. I live near 12th and Springdale. Right now, some of my neighbors are still without power from the storm last week. Some of them have holes in their roofs. Some of them have their trees and their lives uprooted. Instead of debating how we can best help our neighbors and our communities, we're debating how best to surveil and over-police them. I think the ALPR program represents a profound lack of imagination in two main ways. First, a lack of imagination of all the nefarious and authoritarian ways that this surveillance and the resulting data can and will be used. People have talked a lot about how it's already being used by ICE in targeting people seeking reproductive health care. I'm also concerned about all the ways that we haven't even thought of yet. The lessons of authoritarianism in the past show that this lack of imagination leads us down a lot of different dark roads. Second, I think it's a lack of imagination of how we could better use the time, the resources, and the money for programs like this to actually help and support people in our communities, help literally keep roofs over their heads in times of crisis, and help them in ways that directly impact and benefit their lives. So I would urge you to not continue the contract, to vote no on item 67. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I may. Hi, did you say James? Yes. Hi there. So the last I heard, all D1 residents had been restored. I heard everything you heard, but after that whirlwind of nonstop emails from Amy Everhart, the last I heard was everybody was restored yesterday. So if that's not the case, then I need to get back on the phone. And so I'm going to send somebody from my staff down to have a chat with you real quick.
Yes, I just know that one of my friends in my neighborhood was staying at our house last night.
As I'm saying, if that's still happening, then I don't have good data.
So maybe it's changed in the last 12 hours or something.
I'll have somebody from D1 come talk to you real quick and get your information. If we get your friend's information, that'd be helpful. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Good morning, Council. My name is Jen Campbell. I live in District 9, and I'm here this morning to urge you to end the pilot program with Flock and focus on other community-based tools to keep Austinites safe. My first concern is the fact that data collected by Flock has been used by law enforcement agencies who do not have legal or contractual access to it. We know that ICE is using ALPR data to target immigrants that has been widely reported and spoken about this morning. In a climate where immigrants are afraid to go to the grocery store, take their children to school, or go to work, the City of Austin can take the small but meaningful measure of stopping the unregulated flow of information to ICE. Furthermore, why was the city's legal team satisfied with the so-called verbal agreement that Flock would not share the data collected by their cameras? Following Trump's second election, reports show that local law enforcement officers, when prompted to list the reason they shared ALPR data with ICE enforcement and removal operations, have started merely listing immigration in their queries. Immigration is not probable cause. And this unrestricted flow of data to a company that has refused this simple accountability measure can, has, and will continue to be used to terrorize people, separate families, and racially profile our friends and neighbors. The simple solution is to end this program and invest in community health and safety, fund eviction relief, emergency and behavioral health services, and immigrant legal defense. Give immigrants, trans people, and other targeted populations the small amount of encouragement that the city is committed to them and not to unaccountable private companies. Thank you.
Good morning, Council. My name is Daniela Silva. I'm a resident of District 3, and I'm here on behalf of Workers' Defense Action Fund, asking you to vote no on this item and to reject the ALPR program. Personally, I can appreciate that Council is paying deep care to those who have had their cars stolen and the distress that going through that kind of experience can cause. I know that if my car was stolen, I would be completely devastated since it would be such a massive financial hit for me. And I do live in a neighborhood where my car is more likely to be stolen than other parts of town. Despite all of this, I still do not think the risk that this mass surveillance technology brings by putting so many people in danger is worth the possibility that I might retrieve my car that one day could get stolen. And I can acknowledge that a desire to keep Austinites a little bit safer and more comfortable would lead to some of you to seek reasonable guardrails to protect our data. However, guardrail approach may have been sensible in the past with strict enforceable limits and consequences, but we are simply in a different place now. The federal and state governments are using surveillance tool to target immigrants in a way that they haven't before, and that context makes continuing the contract, especially with Flock, a company that makes its profits from selling data, dangerous and irresponsible. Journalists across the country have revealed ICE is currently accessing this data to carry out mass deportations, and a recent article reported that ICE tapped into Flock's safety data through formal request or by giving federal immigration enforcement side door access to the tool. They're already requesting data from municipalities that target the immigrant community, including the recent data request from City of Houston on people cited for driving without a license, which targets undocumented community members. DPS requested ALPR data to track pilot programs, cited trafficking as their reason, which SB4 has expanded that to include people driving with undocumented folks. SB8 is also a concern, and please vote no on this item.
Good morning, everyone. Hello from the Capitol. My name is Chris Harris. I'm from District 9, and I'm here in opposition to item 67. As becoming the old man of this crew, I'm just going to do a little history. In 2020, the ALPR program was canceled. It was canceled as part of a national conversation that said that police were overpowered and overfunded, And they used that funding and that power to over-surveil and over-police underserved Black and brown communities. And that was a just decision. In the midst of pandemic-fueled spike in certain offenses, and in your desire to meet the fear that pervaded much of this community during that time, you all sought solutions, and law enforcement brought you ALPRs as one of those things that they could bring back to help with those issues. And we were in a post-Roe world at this point. We were in a post-SB4 world. And so you at least sought to put some guardrails on this. You put a time limit on it. I think wisely so, in order to vet and see if this could work. I obviously did not agree with that decision, but I also understand it. As a member of the now defunct ethics board of the Axon Corporation, back in 2021, I got a sneak peek at Axon Fleet 3 when they made the decision to deploy ALPRs to their dash cam suite. And while our ethics board had recommended that Axon not put facial recognition on their body cameras, which they complied with, we did not recommend not moving forward with this. And I regret that. Now we know.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Keila Estevez.
Muy buenos días. Me llamo Keila Esteves. Resido en el Distrito 4 y le incito a que vote no. Okay. Y le incito que no al punto 67 y que le haga saber que los únicos datos que nunca podrán filtrarse o utilizarse indebidamente son los que nunca se capturaron en primer lugar. Se nos ha dicho que existen guardarreales, que los datos se borran a los 7 días, que solo se utilizan para investigaciones penales, pero la realidad es que una vez recogidos los datos se pueden acceder a ellos, ampliarlos, compartirlos, piratearlos y citarlos a abusar de ellos. Y al final, así será en el 2020, un pirata informático irrumpió en el sistema de las cámaras ALPR y accedió a las transmisiones de las cámaras en directo y a los datos de ubicación almacenados en tiempo real.
Good morning. My name is Keila Esteves, and I live in District 4. I invite you to vote no for item 67, and to let know that the only data that cannot be breached or cannot be used in abuse of power is the data that is never captured in the first place. It has been told that there are guardrails, that the data is going to be deleted in 7 days, that it's only going to be used for criminal investigations. But the reality is that once the data is collected, anybody can access to it, amplify it, share, it can be hacked, it can be abuse of power, and at the end, this is going to be what happens. In 2020, a hacker accessed the ALPR cameras and access to transmissions of cameras that were live and location data that were stored in real time.
En el 2019, Aduanas y Protección Fronteriza sufrió una brecha que filtró docenas de miles de imágenes de matrículas. Se trata de agencias federales con enormes presupuestos de ciberseguridad y ni siquiera ellas pudieron proteger los datos. Flock dice que está construyendo una red de seguridad, pero lo que realmente está construyendo es una infraestructura de rastreo a nivel nacional y Austin está ayudando a financiarla.
In 2019, Customs and Homeland Security, they have a breach that filtered thousands of images of license plates. We are talking here about federal agencies that have a humongous budget on cybersecurity, and not even them could protect the data. Flock says that they are building a safety network, but in reality, what they are building is a tracking infrastructure at the national level, and Austin is helping to finance it.
Las agencias locales pueden compartir los datos de nuestra seguridad con las fuerzas de seguridad federales y FLOT puede conceder acceso a nuestras jurisdicciones sin nuestro consentimiento o consentimiento y cuando produce abuso no hay ningún recurso significativo. Un policía de Texas utilizó esta cámara de la misma empresa con la que queremos renovar nuestro contrato para para rastrear a una mujer que abortó.
The local agencies can share the data of our city with the federal agencies, and FLOC can give access to other jurisdictions without our knowledge, without our consent. This way, there can be an abuse of power, and there's not going to be any major resource that can fix it. A police officer in Texas used these cameras with the same company that we're going to renew, that they want to renew this contract, to track a woman that had an abortion.
The time has expired.
Muchas gracias.
Okay, vote no, item 67. Thank you.
Diana Williams.
Good morning. My name is Diana Williams, and I'm with Grassroots Leadership. I work in the northeast part of the city. I'm asking you to vote no on item 67. You say there will be guardrails in place, data deleted after 7 days. How will anyone be sure this is happening as you say it will? Once the data is collected, who knows where it will live? That same data itself is subject to being shared, hacked, or accessed. Do not use the City of Austin's funding to support a company, Flock, who supports the ALPR contract. We know who will be subject to this type of surveillance and harm, and we know who will not be. Instead, use these funds to support community services that are very much needed. Nothing good will become of this. Unnecessary stops, arrests, interactions with police that oftentimes are detrimental to our safety. We have seen how some of these stops have turned out. We are talking about the invasion of our privacy, being stopped for no reason at all by DPS, ICE, state troopers, and local police. We should not be subject to being stopped just because of our surname. I urge you to protect our communities by not collecting data at all and vote no on item 67. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Stephen Rivas, Roxana Herndon, Stephen Deline,
Good morning, everyone. I'm Stephen Rivas. My husband and I are 19-year residents of the Galindo neighborhood, District 3. So thank you, council members, Mayor Pro Tem, TC. Congratulations, Ms. Thomas, for being here. Clearly, I am on the side of not supporting any ALPRs moving forward in the city today. My background as a public policy and a political consultant started in public safety. My police department, I've served as a consultant throughout the United States and Canada, and I feel like I've kind of dropped the ball here. It's why I'm at the mic this morning. I come from a family of city managers and emergency managers, and I feel like we should have seen the privacy aspect of this early on. I'm concerned about our LGBTQIA folks being tracked, not in town, by somebody that can pull up the Flock software in Pocatello, Idaho, and see what's happening in Austin. The data that's collected here is everywhere, and I think that's a concern for all of us. I think we probably should have budgeted for a chief privacy officer to look at all the data that we have from a municipal level, including these types of contracts. But I would urge the council and mayor, our legal team and TC, let's try and find a way to bridge the gap of public safety and data and privacy, and let's not move forward with this process that we have. Times have changed. Originally, I was looking forward to, the Kia boys. We had a lot of cars stolen. Even my neighbor had a couple of cars stolen in our neighborhood. Broken cars that were broken into at parks. Now we're talking about people's lives, their future. And let's make sure that everyone in this community has the God-given right to succeed, and they're not held back by a data contract that we have from something like license plate readers. Thank you for your time.
Hello, Stephen DeLine from District 9, here representing myself. I'd like to ask everybody on the council to please vote against this. Flock Safety, one of their largest investors is Andreessen Horowitz, which is owned by Mark Andreessen. He's one of the quote-unquote tech bros that's involved with Peter Thiel, Elon Musk. Having all of this data available to Flock Safety when they have publicly stated that they intend to couple that with AI programs and CCTV in order to track the entire population, coupled with Palantir getting the most recent contract to make lists of people in the United States. It's a serious national security issue to where if you have any care for the population of Austin, you should vote against this, because this is something that is going to increase risk for everybody that lives in this city, regardless of who you are, your identity. It could be something as simple as whether or not you even are around Democrats because of geofencing and the AI capabilities that we have. This is something that is just a terrible idea. I was extremely disappointed to hear that this was extended by the council and everybody that voted for extending this. So hopefully we can fix that. Last time I was here was about cap and stitch with trying to fund things like reducing the risk of wildfires or trying to actually help people in the city of Austin. So please vote against this. Thank you for your time.
For the briefing item, Angel Lucero.
And for my colleagues, I just want to flag that these next two speakers are individuals who have signed up to speak on the citywide strategic plan.
We also have Zenobia Joseph. Mayor Pro Tem, that concludes all the speakers for the work session.
Okay, thank you. And just one final check, anyone in the audience today that has been called that has not testified? All right. Thank you, clerk, and thank you to all of our speakers. Colleagues, we will now move on to the pulled item, item 67, the automatic license plate reader program. As I mentioned earlier, staff has a presentation, so as they set up their presentation materials, I will turn it over to our city manager, Manager Broadnex, for opening remarks.
Thank you and good morning, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council. In response to your request to discuss item 67 on Thursday's City Council meeting agenda, the Austin Police Department has prepared a presentation on the automated license plate reader program. The presentation will go over the purpose of the initiative, its impact on public safety, APD's safeguards for the system, our efforts to promote transparency and accountability, and the contract revisions made in response to audit recommendations. I'll now hand it off to Assistant Chief Sheldon Askew, as well as Chief Lisa Davis, to get started on the presentation. Chief?
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Look forward to this presentation. Again, to all the speakers, I understand. I truly do. We are living in different times. I understand that. But I also want us to keep an open mind on what the possibilities are here. And so I'm going to turn it over to Scott Askew to answer some questions.
Yes, Council, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the staff, I appreciate the opportunity to get before you today. As the city manager stated, there's a lot of conversation regarding the ALPR system, and the Austin Police Department has yet to step in front of you and talk about the success stories that we've had. I've prepared a PowerPoint to walk you through all of that, but what I'd like to do before we even get started is just talk about a few things that I think are extremely important for not only yourselves to understand, but the community to understand as well. First of all, this police department is 300 officers short currently. We do not have enough officers to affect the job that we would prefer to do without the use of technology to supplement the effectiveness and efficiency of the cops that are out on the street on a daily basis. That does not mean that we're not trying to get justice for our victims. We absolutely are. We're just better or more successful when we have technology such as ALPR to do it. So please keep that in mind. With respect to our ability to retain or to make up that shortfall of those 300 cops, if we want to be an active agency who is able to attract talent and to bring people to this department, to this city, to do this very job, we have to arm those people with the ability to actually execute and succeed. We will not attract talent when we are comparing our city to other cities across this great nation that have that technology, deploy that technology, and set their people up for success. We have to keep that in mind. And what we're trying to do is fill the ranks of those 300 cops that are missing right now. Removing ALPR is a step backwards in that endeavor. Signaling to criminals. We would all be naive to believe that criminals across this great nation are only committing criminal acts in their communities. They're absolutely coming to Austin, Texas. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to go into great detail, but as of late, there was a case where some individuals based out of between here and Dallas traveled to Austin to perpetrate crime. They were actually caught in Austin due to the great work of the men and women of the Austin Police Department and the utilization of ALPR. A deep dive into that particular case revealed that these folks were actually committing crimes all the way north to Chicago. So again, to believe for a second that criminals aren't going to be paying attention and understanding that we don't have ALPR in our city, I think is short-sighted. And we have to understand that when we turn this off, if we decide to turn this off, there will be a negative impact to the safety and security of our citizens. And we're not just talking about stolen vehicles. We're talking about violent criminals that are making their way into our cities to commit these heinous acts. The community being victimized. I would like to start this by addressing those community members who have gotten up here and spoken to you. And I say this sincerely. I have an 11-year-old daughter. I can't imagine a scenario where my 11-year-old daughter lives in fear of her parents being picked up, deported, or anything of the such. I can't even imagine what these children are going through. At the same time, I can't imagine a scenario where a city and a police department loses technology that potentially gets my daughter justice if something were to happen to me or my wife. I want to talk to those people. I want to understand their concerns. I want to build a bridge of trust and collaboration with those people. Their concerns are very valid. I completely understand their concerns. I completely hear their concerns. I want to collaborate with them. What I don't want to do is simultaneously hurt all of the victims that we're trying to get justice for, that again are victims of much more heinous crimes than stolen vehicles. I'll talk about a couple things that were said by a couple of community members that quite frankly need to be expanded upon. Sharing of data. I can tell you, and I'm happy to go into it. Let's talk first about the sharing of data. The Austin Police Department has shared its data during the trial period 6 times in total. 3 times in the fourth quarter of 2024 and 3 times in the first quarter of 2025. Those happened, and I'll break those down. The Austin Fire Department, we shared a data set with respect to arson. There was another one shared with the Texas Department of Public Safety, and it was for the smuggling of persons. I know there was some conversation at the Audit Finance Committee, and I'd really like to break down just for a second what smuggling of persons is. When someone is smuggling someone, they're doing so with the intent to hide that person. In other words, they're doing it, putting that person at risk. I think all of us remember the incident that happened in Houston, Texas, when a number of people were piled in the back of an 18-wheeler, taken to a side street, and all of them died as a result of staying stuck inside that 18-wheeler. That is smuggling of persons. That is the title code that which DPS asked us to share that information with. Again, a very heinous crime that led to the death of people that should have never been put in that situation to begin with. Let me talk about the next one. It's just Bastrop County, and it's an auto theft case. Again, auto theft is oftentimes underplayed rather, because people see it as just a stolen vehicle. In fact, yes, it is just a stolen vehicle. And most of us have insurance, and most of our cars will be replaced. The issue isn't just there. The issue lies in the fact that how are these parents supposed to get their kids to school? How are they supposed to get themselves to the doctor? How are they supposed to get themselves to church? To the things that all of us take for granted who don't have our cars stolen. The reality is many of our community members who fall victim of stolen cars, they only have one vehicle. So it's crippling for the entire family. This is something that's very impactful and shouldn't be just brushed away as an inconvenience that the insurance company is going to replace. It's very, very impactful. Moving into the first quarter of 2025, there was 3 sharing events. The first one, ironically, was with Austin Fire Department for arson as well. There was an event in Austin, Texas, where an individual walked up to an apartment complex, knocked on the door. When the resident opened, they took a flammable liquid, splashed it inside the door, and set the place on fire. A very, very heinous act that resulted in someone's serious injury. That person was in the hospital for a very, very long time. I'm not sure if it was that case in January of 25 that AFD requested the information on, or if it was the other one. But in either case, it was one of the arson cases that I just mentioned. Hayes County requested information in February of 26 for a sexual assault. Sexual assault, a very, very significant, serious problem that the Austin Police Department and every community faces. We see our victims in these cases undermined. We see them challenged in ways that we can't even imagine. And we've utilized this ALPR system to get them justice. February 28th, 2025 was the final, and it was a Georgetown Police Department request for auto theft. I've already talked about auto theft. But you, again, understand the importance of it. There were 2 additional that happened outside of the trial period as we continued based on the extension that you all provided us in the second quarter of 2025. The first of which, again, ironically, was AFD requesting arson investigation, and the last of which was Texas DPS for an aggravated sexual assault. Again, sexual assault. The difference being is it's aggravated in this case. Most times, and this doesn't apply across the board, but in most cases, the Texas Penal Code defines an aggravated offense when someone uses a weapon. So I can't even imagine the trauma that particular victim experienced, but I can tell you that the use of ALPR allowed for potentially the Texas Department of Public Safety to identify the suspect in that case and potentially hold that person accountable. If we could, can we present the PowerPoint? Thank you. Having said all that, I'd like to move into the PowerPoint itself, and I'd like to start with the timeline. In September 22, obviously, the council granted APD authority to use ALPR under the resolution in 2022. Moving into 2023, APD collaborated with community members and stakeholders to create ALPR use policy. Again, this shows our willingness and our commitment to this community to build bridges, to build trust, and to build a policy that we collectively as a community who live together, work together, play together, can live with. And that's exactly what we believed we had built. If there are community members that are listening to me right now, please hear me. Contact the police department, contact me. Let's have some conversations, because what we have to do is strike a balance with technology to make sure that people are safe. Moving into middle of 2023, APD identified a vendor, and Flock was that vendor we identified. We obtained council approval to get funding, and of course, we signed a contract. March 29th of 2024, the cameras went live in the city of Austin. In October of 2024, the Axon Fleet 3 contract was approved, and that ALPR system was activated. In March 2025, council approved the 90-day pilot extension, which is where we are right now, and it'll expire, obviously, June of 2025. May 2025, city auditor finalized and presented audit for the one-year trial to the city audit finance committee, city council rather. In May of 2025, APD adopted and implemented program changes recommended by the city auditor and council. Next slide, please. The one-year results. The one-year results are telling, and you've seen the audit finance report. We located approximately 176 vehicles during the pilot program period. Again, I won't go down that road, but I certainly don't believe that stolen vehicles are a non-issue. Apprehending individuals involved in serious crimes. We talked about this too, just very, very briefly. I'm going to go into a lot more detail here in a few minutes. But we're talking about capital murders. We're talking about murders, robberies, aggravated assaults, sexual assaults, and kidnappings. Very, very serious criminal offenses. I think it needs to be said too that when we're talking about these criminal offenses, people they don't quite understand the correlation between people in our community who might be able to commit these particular crimes. I can't underscore enough that there's a very, very small percentage of our community members who are actually willing to perpetrate crime. But those people who are willing to perpetrate crimes such as capital murders, robberies, aggravated assaults, they're absolutely willing to engage in other activity that doesn't rise to that level. And when they do, they victimize a lot of our community. And in some cases, they are not caught. In some cases, they get away with it. And in some cases, they continue to go on and perpetrate more crimes against our community members while the police department tries desperately to make a case against them and hold them accountable. Aiding in investigations, ALPR data has provided critical leads to detectives. What I'll say there is this. There are cases in this police department that I firmly believe would not have been solved had it not been for the use of the ALPR system. I'll expand on that and say that there are cases in this police department that I think were solved in a very, very short period of time because of the ALPR use. As a matter of fact, there was a murder that happened not too terribly long ago. I can't go into the details of, but I will tell you that that suspect was identified and captured within 2 hours of the murder itself. Again, think back on what I just talked about with respect to those people who are willing to commit murder in our community. Are they willing to go out and commit other crimes? They absolutely are. Did the person that perpetrated that crime, having been caught in 2 hours, have the opportunity to go out and do anything else? I would offer you he did not. And as a matter of fact, we held that person accountable thanks to the use of ALPR. Next slide, please. Strict data retention policies. Data collected by the ALPR system is not linked to a criminal investigation. It was retained for a very short period of time. You saw this in the audit finance report. We maintain data for 7 days. 7 days is it. We are the lowest retention period of any of our peer group. Anywhere else in our peer group, those cities and police departments more specifically that the audit finance committee looked at, we were the lowest by far. Most of those agencies are 30 days and they go up from there. Controlled access and use. Police department deploys least access policy. We do not give access to any systems that any member of the police department, regardless sworn, civilian, or otherwise, does not have a need to have access to. It minimizes risk to the police department. It minimizes risk to data. It minimizes risk across the board. So we've maintained that practice. That's a city practice, but the police department absolutely deploys it in a way to again, minimize risk. With that being said, for those people who have access to the ALPR system, they've all completed training on that particular system. They all understand what the system can do, what its capabilities are. In the event that we have an officer or an employee rather that violates our general orders, we have processes in place to correct and address those issues. We absolutely have, and we absolutely will in the future have individuals at the police department that violate our policies. And we will look at those cases and we will hold people accountable. And lastly, I'd like to touch on the fact that the state of Texas has laws in place that hold people criminally responsible in the event that they use data sets that they're not supposed to be using for purposes of their own benefit. So I think it's extremely important to understand up to and including criminal penalties for officers who are using this information in a way that they're not supposed to be using it for. Next slide, please. Limited data sharing. Again, we've talked about this, unpackaged exactly every situation and circumstance where we have shared data. We have a very, very strict data sharing policy. First and foremost, no department has access directly to our ALPR data. Nobody. The only way you can get our data is if you submit a request. And when you submit a request, those requests go to one of two places. If it's during business hours, they go over to the Austin Regional Intelligence Center because that department is staffed during the day. Those requests are looked at by a lieutenant. A lieutenant looks at those requests and he compares what the request is against our policy as well as the resolution. And he makes a decision as to whether or not it complies with it. If it doesn't comply with it, then it's not honored. Once the lieutenant makes sure that it falls in line with the resolution, he then requires that a memorandum of understanding is signed by the requesting agency. What that does is the agency promises that they will destroy the data and only use the data for the stated purpose. And beyond those safeguards, in the event that we get a request that's beyond the scope of, or more broadly, beyond the scope of a specific incident, then there are processes in place to notify the Office of Police Oversight, the mayor, and this very council that it's happened. So we have robust safeguards in place to ensure that what's going on, the requests that are coming in, are monitored, they're reviewed, and there's a standard approach taken so that we can avoid the issues that some of our community members believe are going on right now, which I can assure you they're not. Transparency and audits. We are committed to transparency regarding this program. We've worked diligently with the city auditor's office. We've conducted internal quarterly audits on our own, and we've highlighted issues that we've discovered to the very auditor, who we knew was coming to talk to you all. We are not hiding from our missteps. I've said before, and I'll say again, we've absolutely got room for improvement, and we've absolutely got some employees that didn't either understand or misinterpreted policy in their training, and we are working to address those issues now. Next slide, please. The findings. So I'm going to go into this for a little bit. There are a couple of points that I'd like to make. These are direct quotes that were taken from the actual audit report. Provide accurate ALPR system data. That's their words. Incorporate best practices observed in peer police departments. Properly use the ALPR software and multiple hot lists leading to 13,122 matches, 0 incorrect or unjustified stops. Again, an example of me telling you that we've messed up. The bullet point just below that is something I added to this slide. APD had 4 stops, arrests, for Class B misdemeanors that are not authorized per the resolution. And I'm happy to go into those, and I will here in the near future. But again, it's me telling you, showing you that we are human, and we are going to make missteps, and we're going to own those missteps when we do. Adhere to council data sharing limitations, data sharing on 3 occasions. Now, keep in mind that there were 8 total since the inception of this particular audit report. Only included Q4 of 2024, and that's why it's 3. So I don't want there to be any misunderstandings there, and I'm happy to answer any questions that may come as a follow-up. Completed 27 requests from APD officers for license plate numbers to be entered into the APD customized hot list. Folks, these are cases, and these are many cases where a detective, an officer is investigating, again, a very heinous crime, a murder, a sexual assault, things of that nature. That's the reason why we want to get these license plates directly entered into a hot list, so that when our officers are driving around, we're arming them with the information to succeed. We're arming them with the information to find and apprehend these individuals before they go out and perpetrate additional crimes. Next slide, please. The auditor had 4 recommendations. This is the first. Automated data pools and data requests, including automated anonymization of the data for audit purposes. If no automation is available, APD should adhere to specific written schedules for manual pulling and requesting required data for audits. We completely agree. We have absolutely set that into motion. We've been working with the vendors to get automated push of data to us so that there are no issues, and we are currently implementing that recommendation. Next slide, please. Number 2, clearly describe roles and responsibilities for staff involved with risk management audits, including documenting audit procedures so that audit processes can be replicated by future rotations of staff. We understand this is going to happen. We understand that our staff members are going to transfer, and we have already built a go-by, if you will, a guide to ensure that there is accuracy or consistency with respect to the way in which these audits are being completed. And the estimated completion on that is July 31st of 2025. Again, we agree with number 2. Number 3. Number 3, regular reviews of ALPR use compliance with policy requirements. Again, we recognize there are people in our organization who have not followed to the letter the guidance given by council and our policy. We agree with this recommendation. We think there are lessons to be learned here, and we think there's an opportunity to include those in our training so that we can make sure that moving forward into the future, officers do not continue to act in this way. So we absolutely agree with this recommendation, and we're implementing many of these changes, or all these changes, that should say. Next. Defined timeline for reporting regular risk management audits, including a list of stakeholders and regular shared audit results with. Now, as you all know, we have a public-facing dashboard now that includes data from Flock as well as the Axon side. It gives quite a bit of information. It lays out our policy, when and when it cannot be used. But in addition to that, the police department recognizes there are other stakeholders that we should be providing this information to. As a result, we are gearing up to provide that information without a request to the OPO, to the committee, Public Safety Committee, as well as yourselves, to make sure that you have the information that we have with respect to those quarterly audits. Next slide, please. Okay, so there was a conversation that came up in the Audit Finance Committee specific to the Flock ALPR contract, and it was specific to section 4.4, and some of our citizen members have come up and they have mentioned this as a concern for them. And look, we agree. We recognize what they're saying. We recognize that there's concern. And I'm happy to report to you that as soon as I left our Audit Finance Committee meeting, I went to work addressing this very issue. I met with the vendor a couple of times, worked with our legal department to ensure that we could change the language to completely get us out of the business of aggregated data, and we've done so. And the highlighted portion at the bottom of the slide here is exactly what we added, which allowed for us to completely opt out of the scraped, if you will, aggregated data. Now, I think it's important to understand what aggregated data is. Aggregated data is a culmination of all of Flock's customers, and that includes all those in Texas, of anonymized data. The anonymized data includes, it doesn't include anything other than a picture of a license plate. They don't know the location, they don't know the city, they don't even know whose data it belongs to. So across the state of Texas, however many Flock customers there are, have this particular data set compiled, and it's used specifically to allow for the systems to learn the difference as it views it between an E and an F, and that's just an example, right? It teaches the system the difference in characters. And Flock believes that this allows for their systems to be more accurate, which I agree with. And that's the reason why this contract language exists. But regardless of why it exists, I believe that we owe it to our community to get us out of the business of sharing or them even having access to that data. Again, they wouldn't even know who that data belonged to. They certainly wouldn't know it was from Austin. They would look across the entire state of Texas and go, I wonder where that car's at. Another point I'd like to make is regardless of whether or not they have a picture of a license plate, it does not tie back to a registered owner. No one has, at Flock, no one has the ability to look at that license plate and know anything about who is registered to that vehicle, who owns that vehicle, who's driving that vehicle, or anything about those people. It's a picture of a license plate, and that's it. Next slide, please. Success stories. So I'm going to dive into this, and I'm going to start just by simply saying this particular success stories data set goes from March 2024 through May of 2025, obviously the entire trial period, as well as a portion of the extension that you all granted Austin Police Department. We've solved many, many violent crimes with this. And I want to caveat before I even start running down this list and explaining some of these crimes to you all, that these zip codes listed above represent at least a single event, and in some cases, multiple events. These aren't singular in some cases, is my point. So I don't want people to look at this, count the number of zip codes and assume that they only included one event, because that is not the case in some instances. Capital murder. Capital murder is an offense where someone has lost their life while someone is committing a felony offense against them. So while someone is being robbed, while someone is being sexually assaulted, while someone is being robbed, they are killed in the process. That's what constitutes a capital murder. It's not a stolen car. It's a much, much more serious crime. And there were 4 zip codes where that particular crime occurred in this city, and ALPR was utilized to at least help or aid in the solving, identifying of those particular individuals that committed those crimes. Murder. Murder is the offense of someone being killed by another. There was a dozen zip codes in our city, minimum. Like I said, some had multiple. In our city, a dozen plus people were murdered, and the Austin Police Department leveraged the ALPR data system to either catch or aid in catching the people that committed those particular offenses. Aggravated robbery. Aggravated robbery is the commission of robbery, which is taking of someone's property, a theft by force. In an aggravated situation, it's where someone had a weapon. And what I'll talk to you about later in another example is when a suspect shot or has shot at victims when they were the victim of an aggravated robbery. And there's about 24 of those cases listed by zip code. Again, some of those are listed multiple times. Robbery by assault. Robbery by assault is robbery where someone assaults the other person, typically with their hands, their feet, something like that, not with a weapon. Burglary of residence. There was 1 zip code. Aggravated assault. There were 5. Sex crimes. There were 2. Failed to stop or enter aid. There was an incident downtown. Arson. There was 1 directly tied back to the Austin Police Department. And then auto theft, there was 176 in various zip codes throughout the city. Next slide, please. So now I want to break down 4 instances, the first of which is the murder, number 23 of 2024. The case number is at the top, and the zip code and where it happened is there. On May 22nd, 2024, suspect shot and killed the victim at 21:59 hours. Based on information provided by witnesses, the suspect were believed to have departed in a gray pickup, which were parked outside the complex. Video was located, which supported this narrative, showing suspects arrived at the complex at 21:45. Witnesses reported hearing gunshots a short time later, and after which the witnesses witnessed the suspect walking away from the victim's apartment. Search of the area located additional video of the suspect vehicle after the murder. Using ALPR and other investigative techniques, the suspect vehicle was eventually identified as a gray Toyota Tundra pickup, and 2 suspects were ultimately arrested and charged in that murder. Next slide, please. Murder 21 of 2025. April 27th, 2025, the suspects located the victim and shot her at approximately 22:16 hours. Police had a description of the suspect vehicle, which was a red Chevy pickup, utilizing Flock, which captured the photo of the suspect vehicle just a few blocks away from the murder. APD confirmed the suspect vehicle and sent a BOLO, or be on the lookout. At approximately 04:45 hours, 6 hours roughly after the murder, Kerr County Sheriff's Office located the suspects and took them into custody. At the time of the arrest, a Glock pistol was located in one of the suspects, and the ammunition from the gun matched the cartridges located at the murder scene. One suspect admitted taking part in the murder after the arrest. Next slide, please. This is aggravated robbery series. I talked earlier about how people who were willing to commit these heinous acts likely commit additional heinous acts, and this is an example of exactly what I was just referring to. Starting in April 25th of 2025 and continuing through May 5th of 2025, suspects committed 5 aggravated robberies. Again, aggravated robbery is a robbery involving a weapon. There are the case numbers, and there are the zip codes in which they took place, one of which being in Travis County. In this series, suspects demonstrated a willingness to fire weapons near or at the victims who were known to them, rather, utilizing ALPR and other investigative tools, techniques, the Austin Police Department was able to build cases against these suspects and arrest them before they killed anyone. One of these cases involved the actual discharge of a firearm into a vehicle, and it actually went through the hooded sweatshirt of our victim. So there was very much so intent to cause or inflict harm on that victim. Next slide, please. Can you move the screen the little window at the top? Thank you. This is the next aggravated robbery series I'll discuss, starting April the 9th, 2025, and continuing through April 12th of 2025. Suspects committed 6 aggravated robberies, and this is pretty common. When you find a group of people who are willing to commit an aggravated robbery, oftentimes if you don't catch them, they continue to commit robberies back to back to back, and that's exactly what we see here. In case 250990194, the suspects fired at the victim. Detectives subsequently located a bullet hole in the vehicle of the headrest. So again, another example of how someone is firing a gun directly at a victim. In case 251,157, the victim was shot by the suspects as he refused to exit his vehicle and drove away. Utilizing ALPR and other investigative techniques and tools, APD was able to build a case against the suspects and arrest them before, again, they killed somebody. Next slide, please. So a lot of you probably don't know Detective Tara Dickon. Tara Dickon's been with the police department for a really long time, and currently she's assigned to our Tactical Intelligence Unit. And our Tactical Intelligence Unit is literally tasked with assisting to investigate our homicide unit, our aggravated assault unit, our robbery unit, our sexual assault unit, and a number of other units that investigate very heinous, serious criminal activity. Tara is the type of person who will spend her weekends and her time off digging into the data sets to try and bring victims of crime justice. And she's very, very successful doing so. And when we stood up ALPR about a year ago, she was extremely excited, and she used ALPR to then solve a lot of the crimes that I displayed on that success story slide. I think it's important to understand that if Tara's looking at this right now and Tara's asking the question, I don't know how we're going to solve some of these cases without ALPR, then I think we as a police department have to fight to try to keep something that is so beneficial while striking a balance to make sure that our community members are heard, recognized, and we put safeguards in place to protect their concerns.
Scott, can I add too? I just want to say, when you guys look at your Austin Police Department, who just stood and talked about a 100% clearance rate in 2023 for our homicides, do you understand how incredibly rare that is? 100%, not 100% where we know who the suspect is, 100% of the homicides in 2023, there was an arrest made. That is incredibly rare in this country. And they stand at about a 90-95% otherwise. So the work they do, and Tara is part of that group, do a fantastic job. We have got to have technology at our hands. We had a violent rape of a 4-year-old child, and I can't get into the specifics of it, but without technology, we would not have made an arrest within 12 hours of that occurring. That's the reality and what this can do. Go ahead, Scott.
I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you. Colleagues, before I open it up to questions from the dais, I believe we have a speaker who's here who didn't get the chance to testify earlier. I want to make sure we recognize them for their testimony.
Zenobia Joseph? For the briefing item? Oh.
Is she signed up on the strategic plan? Okay, let's hold that then and keep this commentary focused on the automated license plate reader.
Okay. Ms. Joseph, we'll call you again in a moment.
Okay. All right. I will first recognize Councilmember Siegel, who pulled this item.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Do you want to do Q&A on the staff report before I present?
Up to you.
But while the speakers are here, I wanted to allow that chance, but then I can present.
Okay. So questions on staff presentation first? All right.
Please.
Okay. Councilmember Quadri.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I appreciate the presentation. I just wanted to get, before I got into my questions, I just wanted to get a clarifying question. The Office of the City Auditor reported last Wednesday that there were 9 data sharing instances, not 8. I think 8 is a number that popped up several times during this presentation. The most recent one was on May 28th, 2025. It reads May 2025, Hayes County Sheriff 13A, and it says no offense listed. Do we know what the offense was for?
Sir, to be honest with you, that's not on my list. I'd have to check with the auditor's office to determine what they're referring to.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, it was on, like I said, it came through the Office of the City Auditor just a few short days ago. Staying on that, according to the City Auditor's report, as of April 2025, APD has deployed nearly 500 vehicle-mounted cameras provided by Axon Enterprise on top of the 40 fixed cameras currently in place. I'd like to revisit a point that was made on the April 20th Q&A report from staff, which noted that the Axon Fleet 3 dash cams included an optional feature allowing them to function as license plate readers, so LPRs, with the ability to integrate that data into a central storage location with third-party vendors. So I guess just for me to get some clarification, can we confirm for the public whether data from both the 40 fixed LPR cameras and the 500 plus Axon vehicle mounted cameras are currently integrated exclusively into the Flock system?
So, sir, I can't tell you exactly where the Axon data is stored. I can tell you definitively that most vendors will use like Amazon Web Services as an example, and that's exactly what Flock does. They store the data there because obviously those particular companies offer very, very robust security platforms. When data is transferred, in these particular cases, when pictures are taken of license plates and they're transferred from, say, the cameras to, of course, the cloud, they're encrypted at transit. They're encrypted once they rest on the server, and they're stored in such a way that allows for, again, security. I can't remember the acronym SOC 2, SOC 3 compliant, which is essentially security standards testing is met in those cases. And in many cases, in both of ours, Flock as well as Axon, they're FedRAMP compliant, meaning they carry with them the highest standards to ensure that, of course, the data is secured in such a way that there is no issue with respect to transferring the data. So the chain of custody issues you mentioned and all of that are obsolete. They're sound. Did I capture your question correctly?
Yeah, you did. And then I just also wanted to get clarification. Besides Flock, whether there are any other third-party vendors that receive, store, or process LPR data?
When you say third-party vendors, let me take a stab at this, and you tell me whether or not you need more. With respect to Flock, when Flock collects our data, it sets within their systems. They don't share our data. They don't have the ability or the authority to share our data. We have that authority. It rests solely with us, and we don't share it outside. There are some agencies throughout the country who will share that data with their partner agencies or with agencies across the nation. We do not do that. We have the policy and the procedure in place that I discussed earlier, which is it's a dual ingestion point, the ARIC as well as the RTCC, which I did not mention, the Real-Time Crime Center is our after-hours ingestion point for data, for data outside sharing request. And it's the same policy or procedure, rather, that I discussed earlier with respect to the ARIC.
Great, yeah. And then just continuing on the same topic, is there a separate contract or legal agreement with Axon that governs how LPR data is collected via Fleet 3 dash cams, how they can be used, stored, or shared?
So there is a contract with the Axon Corporation. The Axon Corporation contract is actually the Fleet 3 contract, which is actually held by the Radio Shop, part of CTM, Public Safety. That particular contract, again, is with them. So it's actually carved out, I guess, supported police department, but yes, it exists.
Great. And then I just wanted to flag some serious civil liberty concerns that came up. The city auditor report from May 2025 titled APD License Plate Reader. There's a section in it on page 12 where it reads, however, the language of the city's contract with Flock Safety, Flock, could potentially allow the company to retain data that could be later used by other law enforcement entities contrary to Austin's intended purpose. Legally, if Flock possesses information relevant to a law enforcement investigation, even one initiated outside of Austin, they are required to share that data, potentially leading to uses tied to First Amendment activities, reproductive health care, or immigration enforcement. So my question related to that let me go on a little bit more. There was a separate piece that came out through reporting by 404 Media. There was a leak among folks who worked at Flock. The report came out on May 14, 2025, and it read, license plate reader company Flock is building a massive people lookup tool. Leak shows on the first page of the report, it said Flock, the automatic license plate reader company whose cameras are installed in more than 5,000 communities in the U.S., is building a product that will use people lookup tools, data brokers, and data breachers to jump from LPR, license plate reader, to person, allowing police to much more easily identify and track the movements of people, of specific people around the country without a warrant or court order, according to internal Flock presentation slides, Slack chats, and audio obtained. The new product in question is called Nova. Nova will supplement license plate data with a wealth of personal information sourced from other companies and the wider web, according to the information that was gathered. So my question related to that, has Flock communicated any plans to integrate Nova-like features into existing systems that are deployed here in Austin?
The short answer is no, sir. We've not had any conversations with Flock regarding Nova or any other, systems that would expand the use of ALPR as we know it today. And sir, I think it's important that we understand that some of these articles are being written as a result of cities throughout the nation who have taken a drastically different approach than what the Austin Police Department and its community has taken. I think many of these cities are allowing their police departments to use this technology that undermines those of us who are trying to responsibly use it and use it in alignment with our community, with council, and all the stakeholders' input. So I hope the council understands that those particular articles are being written in extreme cases, and it certainly don't apply in Austin because they're not being used, or the system, rather, the technology is not being used in that manner here.
Okay. Well, and then just to get, once again, just full clarity, I just want to get, an answer from y'all that we are monitoring third-party surveillance vendors and how the vendors may evolve their products in ways that exceed what council originally approved or intended.
Absolutely, sir. And to be honest with you, I can't imagine a scenario where a vendor would give us an additional functionality or feature at a $0 cost. So unlikely that we would get any sort of feature or functionality such as the one you're talking about without us knowing about it. And then secondly, if we got it, we would quickly know we got it because the feature functionality would appear on the dashboard and look drastically different. So again, with the sheer number of people that we have using our systems, I firmly believe we would understand and know. Our chief data officer, who's in charge of that ALPR program, would certainly be able to tell very quickly.
Great. And if I've asked this question before, I apologize, but just to get clarification, there haven't been any conversations with APD as it relates to Flock and Nova, right?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, other questions from the dais? Yes, Councilmember Harper-Madison.
Not a question so much as I just really wanted to flag where I'm at on the item. I know folks are curious, and I'm just going to stay the course. And then I saw something this week that reminded me where my head was at on the issue. And follow me, it'll make sense eventually. So my ex and I got into an argument one time about dog bites. And he was like, yeah, but the difference between what a Chihuahua can do and a Pit Bull could do, and that really stuck with me. Like, what's the nature of the true harm should it occur? And that keeps popping into my head. And then I think I've spoken about, I hate to say misalignment, but that's what it is. My constituents are more concerned about surveillance than I personally, as a human being, am. So I always go with what it is that my constituents prefer along these lines. But in this instance, as a person who doesn't have as much sort of inherent fear around surveillance, I just don't. That said, though, in this instance, I'm also thinking about a news article that I was listening to the other day, and it was a cattle rancher in Wyoming. And she said, 80% of the people I know whose ranches are about to go bankrupt voted for the administration that's about to bankrupt us by way of deporting all of our workers. And I kept thinking about that. She said, we signed our own death warrants. We asked for our demise. And that's kind of where I'm leaning in this instance. And I got to tell you, while I can appreciate the presentation, it left something to be desired, and that it felt more like a justification as opposed to a justification as to why our constituents' concerns aren't maybe not justified, but it was the way that, like the way you said, I hope council understands why those stories are written that way. Of course we understand counterintelligence. I mean, scientific data that gets produced by, big pharma, for example. Sure, we get it. That said, though, I think what I was hoping to hear today was something that addressed the concerns of the folks that it's my responsibility to vote in their best interest. And for them, they don't want to find themselves, and I certainly don't want to find myself, on the it won't age well side of voting history if things go really poorly and it turns out it wasn't a chihuahua biting us, but a pit bull. And I don't want to be a part of the system that inadvertently harms. So I can go ahead and signal that I'm still really struggling. And I think the best way to say I took away from what our constituents were saying from the podium, the best takeaway for me is that folks are saying, but what if? And it's the harm. It's the what if, and watching the harm, the potential harm, just really gives me such great pause. I don't feel like we've been able to justify the harm, the reduction of the potential harm. And I just don't feel confident that I'm going to feel like we can move forward on Thursday with what it is that we have to offer our community. So that's just where I'm at today.
Thank you. Councilmembers, before I move on to Councilmember Lane has a couple questions, and then Councilmember Qadri, followed by Councilmember Duchin. I just want to add a couple questions that I have on my end. It is my understanding that we have one of the highest amount of license plate reader cameras in the state. And I'm just trying to, the question I have is, can you walk us through the rationale and how quickly the department scaled the usage of LPRs? And we went from 40 stationary cameras to hundreds of cameras within vehicles. Just talk us through that decision, that rationale to scale so widely during a pilot year.
Yes, ma'am. So what you're referring to is there are 40 stationary cameras in the city, and those are operated through our vendor Flock. And then we transitioned to the Fleet 3 system, which is the latest iteration of the Axon in-car camera system. And inside that camera is the technology for ALPR. So as you'll recall, I was before council back when we were trying to get the Fleet 3 contract passed on Radio Shop's behalf. And we talked about the aging, what's called a DMAV system that was in our police cars, digital recording system. Now, that system was getting to end of life, some storage issues, cost issues, and everything else. So obviously, it was the wise move for us to move to the Axon Fleet 3 system. Again, a much better system, provides clarity, provides functionality that, in fact, we have grown to be accustomed to with the DMAP system. And it also gives us the ability to allow supervisors to log into those cameras in the event that a critical incident is happening and the officer needs their assistance. So think of like vehicle pursuits or critical incidents and things of that nature. So again, it offered functionality that the DMAV didn't have, plus again, the DMAV was end of life. So as we stood those systems up and we started to install those through attrition, we got to a point where we had quite a few of the ALPR cameras, right? Axon Fleet 3 cameras specifically installed in the vehicles. Now, a lot of that happened through attrition. Some of it happened because we knew, say, these cars were only a year old, and we wanted to put that newer camera system in it to avoid a failure or some of those other issues I just mentioned. So that added to, of course, that number. It's the vast majority of the fleet now. There's probably 100-ish cars out there without an Axon Fleet 3 system in them. And they're, of course, slated to have the Axon Fleet 3 system included in them in the future. If you need more, just let me know, ma'am.
Thank you. And you mentioned earlier that a lieutenant in ARIC or the Real-Time Crime Center does the authorization for any time there is a data request. Is that an APD lieutenant or is that a lieutenant for a law enforcement agency?
No, ma'am, it's an APD lieutenant.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Merlene?
If it's okay, I will take a few minutes to share my perspective on these issues and then ask a couple questions. As has become my habit a little bit, and hopefully I'll be done with this soon since I'm new on the dais, I just wanted to let people know where I'm coming from. So I grew up in Texas. I grew up in a neighborhood that included many families that were a mix of citizens and not citizens. Many of my friends became DACA recipients. My life is very different now from how it was then. I've been elected to represent District 6, which is very different from much of the rest of the city. My children went to an elementary school, a public neighborhood elementary school, not an AISD, so probably not part of the schools that you all in this room typically hear about. But my kids' elementary school was 54% Asian, almost entirely immigrants who had come to the United States as citizens. Currently, my neighborhood is full of Asian immigrants of all different types of status, determined mostly by which country they came from. Some of my friends who've come from China have had a much shorter path to citizenship versus my friends who have come from India and South Asia who have spent decades working on H-1B1 visas with green cards at high-paying jobs, paying taxes, contributing so much to our community, as I am here to attest from how I grew up, that all the immigrants in our Austin community are contributing in very important ways. Sometimes that relates to work, sometimes that relates to the fabric of our neighborhoods, our schools, who our children have the opportunity to meet and grow up with. I value the full range of that. And as someone representing District 6 and bringing a different voice from District 6 to this dais, I also want to share a little bit of what I saw in the first Trump administration as a private citizen, active with the schools. That's all. I knew my neighbors. In the first Trump administration, many of my neighbors, every time they decided to take a flight, were pulled aside for extra screening. My neighbors across the street who thought that they had bought their forever home when they came into the United States on an investor visa to set up an office for their company, which is based in Mexico, decided not to renew that visa after they missed every flight of their family vacation a few months after Trump took office. My friends who are Asian, many of them, during the first Trump administration, experienced a rise in Islamophobia. But, you know, a lot of people can't tell who's Muslim just by looking at them. And so many of my Asian friends experienced the fallout of that, as did some of my Mexican friends, because we're from that part of town where those types of comments and harassment can occur. So I come to City Hall with those perspectives. I ran for this office saying very clearly, and this has not changed, I will not, do not bend on human rights. And I have found much of this public comment to be different from what I have access to in my neck of the woods, although so happy to have made contact with a constituent, and also very resonant with the experiences that we have in Northwest Austin. I know that there are a lot of what ifs that we hear about, but I also affirm that we have seen very clearly what is already happening. And while many of our tech workers who work on H-1B visas, I hope I got that acronym right, there's a lot of them floating through my head right now, but a lot may feel safer from some of what's been going on. But the news tells us very clearly that we have had assistant professors at Ivy League colleges, we have had doctors, lots of healthcare professionals who have been deported. We are not safe no matter how we feel. And in that, I'm talking first about the immigrants that I represent in my neighborhoods, but also I do believe all of us. And us on Austin City Council, a council that cares deeply about these issues, we absolutely have a responsibility to balance how we go about creating safety for people who are inside our boundaries. We also have a responsibility to balance the requests of the people who carry out the work that the council asks to have carried out, and to use technology effectively. So I'm much shorter on that last part because all of the beginning is my own experience and an aspect of District 6 that I don't think really we've heard from that often. So I want to share with you that I very well see the slippery slope and how this could very rapidly shift the thinking of constituents in my district. I will also note that another reason that I ran for City Council is because I have been watching in a very family-oriented district, as many of us represent in different outlying parts of the city. I also have watched as family after family has left the area, has left the state, has left the country, and it's not always been around immigration. It's been around frequently attacks on the LGBT community. I have watched how the state of Texas has constructed its laws so that they are built in an extremely slippery slope. And I have also watched doctors be driven out of the state as it relates to reproductive health, as it relates to adolescent medicine. And if there's one thing that I really would like to stem is the flight of our doctors. So all these things are in my mind as I listen to this discussion and think about how to be most effective as I am up here. I think that the question I have is, once you, Chief Davis and Chief, I'm sorry. I recognize
Ask you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
As you listen to the public comment and all of the questions and comments from my colleagues up here, I would like to understand what you believe to be the most responsive reporting and evaluation schedule that could come to the Public Safety Committee for us to continue to review data, ask questions in a public way, for City Council to keep its hands on what's going on as things shift among our constituents. So things that I'm interested in specifically are, I would certainly want to know about if it's possible to have a quarterly update to Public Safety Committee, if we can formulate or amend things such that there is a built-in end date to whatever it is that we pass, if we pass anything at the council meeting, and anything else that we could structure into how we're passing this. I would love to see that. If I can have that. Any comments now? Welcome follow-up if that's easier or better. Also welcome whatever I might learn in the meeting itself. Thank you.
Councilwoman, I would like to start by reiterating some of the points that I made earlier. Look, I think our community has spoken this morning, and I think they've expressed some concerns that the police department needs to work with them to address. So I think that needs to be resaid. I also believe one of the auditor's recommendations was to provide additional transparency, and I talked about the public-facing dashboards. I talked about quarterly reports sent to the Office of Police Oversight, obviously to Public Safety Committee, as well as the council itself, again, to address the concerns that you're talking about. And I think that, you know, as we move forward, should you all allow for us to continue to use ALPR, I think we need to incorporate some of those changes, if there are some changes we can incorporate into that data set, so that we can give you all as much information as we can, so that you can make the best, most informed decisions for your constituents. So that's what I would offer now. But again, I think it's incumbent upon us to have a more robust conversation, specifically with those folks, again, that came up here and spoke this morning.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it is possible. Look, I want to be, and I will be, a good steward of this data and of what we do with this. And if there ever comes a point when there are questions, when there is an issue, it will be pulled. It will be done. I mean, that's the reality. I look at this, and coming from as your chief of police here, on what we can do to reduce crime, what we can do to make this the safest city in America, what we can do to make this safe for families to be here. I'm coming from that perspective. And so when you add in all of the different, look, coming from talking about this administration and what can come and all of the what ifs, I understand that. But I do think, again, that as your Austin Police Department, we can be good stewards of this and do good with it and make some exceptional, dents in our violent crime and in what it takes to truly make this Austin the safest city in America.
I'll just follow up. I really appreciate your comments. I also appreciate the information that's been shared with me since I took office by Chief Davis, I'll have your name down by Thursday, I'm sorry. I really apologize. And by ACM Garcia. There's the piece of it that obviously we have long needed some changes around in relation to our policing. And I'm happy to hear your responsiveness to some of those concerns. Speaking about the experiences in my district, in Northwest and the northern suburbs of Austin, and how that relates to the progress that we're trying to make around policing and public safety. I think that as we move through all of our decisions, it's really important that we think about all the different things that impact how much our community trusts the public safety response in our areas. And so even though it might seem farther afield, I find it to be very central to the project of restoring trust in responsiveness and appropriate response out in my district. Okay, so on the matter of dashboards, as someone who represents a district that is 60% in Williamson County, and I don't know how this relates to your dashboard, so this might be more of a thought for ACM, our ACM over here. I know, for example, the active incident fire dashboard is only for Travis County. And so anyone who wants that transparency and access to information as it relates to fire response, 60% of my district doesn't have access to that. The other day, I shared with our ACM that for the first time since I've lived in my home, my current home, which has been over a decade, I saw Wilco sheriffs patrolling and making stops at the intersection of 183 that is closest to where I live, so I'm there all the time. I don't know what they're up to. They're not APD. My entire district is full. The entire district has these kinds of, these characteristics that make it that we maybe don't have as much direct contact with police in general, but when they do show up, we also really struggle to get access to information, to get to the point that some of our concerns can really be addressed. And I give the example of Wilco Sheriff being active for the first time in over a decade in that area that I've seen, and I get around a lot, because there are many different ways for fear to be stoked. And we as APD and as the city of Austin, it's just really important that we include in our efforts at dashboards and transparency and effective collaboration these areas where other jurisdictions of law enforcement, among others, are active. And so that's a concern that's way more broad than these license plate readers, but it is also intricately intertwined. And I'll also note that I'm sure there are plenty more of my D6 constituents who would have needed a translator to speak effectively today. And I speak for them as well as I begin to connect more with that part of my community. Thank you.
I would, if I can answer that. I do absolutely. We know, part of Austin's in Williamson County and Hayes. That whole database is, I would hope that that's happening, right? That everything that happens in Austin, regardless of what county it touches, it should be on that dashboard.
Thank you. Councilmember Kadri?
Great. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just have a few more clarifying questions. And I would be remiss not to mention this. I don't know why I was hopeful we might get done a little bit early today, but I'm really excited about the all the conversations happening on the dais. But I do want to wish everyone a happy Pride Month. There's supposed to be there's a Pride Month flag raising ceremony at the county building today, but we are going to be here talking about the issues. But I just wanted to wish everyone a happy Pride Month. I just had some, and if this was in the slide deck, I apologize for missing it. But do we have numbers of recovered stolen vehicles before and after ALPR data? Do we have clearance rates, before and after ALPR data? Do we have those numbers available?
Give me 1 second, sir. I'm just trying to pull something up.
Great.
My apologies, sir. My computer's apparently waiting to open.
Not a problem. I can come back to that since you
Yes, sir.
probably remember it. More out of curiosity, did the department conduct any analysis to determine whether the successes that we've seen, if they can be directly attributed to ALPR, or are we kind of assuming correlation equals causation with what we've seen?
Well, first I want to say that this is a tool. This is not, the ALPR and any type of intelligence like this is not, we have to do other investigations. We use this in conjunction with other tools.
Yes, sir. And I'll expand on that just a little bit. I know there are several attorneys on the dais, and I'll just highlight the fact that probable cause is not a singular piece of evidence. Rather, it's a series of pieces of evidence that are, put together, if you will, to build a case, believing that in fact, the evidence suggests someone has committed a crime. So it's very difficult to quantify, so to speak, I guess the impact to ALPR being 100% the singular tool that made the case. I think there's certainly going to be cases where ALPR played a significant piece, if you will, in establishing probable cause and more importantly, identifying a suspect. And then in the case I talked about earlier, identifying where the suspect may be. So I think there's a wide range of answers to your question, all of which, again, run all the different scenarios that I just kind of mentioned. And I have that data pulled up on the first question when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, so before I give you this answer, please understand that the information will include vehicles that were stolen in other jurisdictions but were recovered in Austin, right? So when you think about the comments made earlier regarding criminals have no idea of boundaries. They don't respect boundaries. They go from city to city to perpetrate crime. Keep that in mind as we're having this discussion. Numbers of vehicles recovered by using ALPR program in comparison to the number of reported stolen vehicles. There were 4,664 auto thefts reported to the Austin Police Department during the pilot period, and 245 vehicles recovered using the ALPR system. Now, that is going to be inclusive of the entire period, so the trial period and then ongoing. So you can roughly, that's probably what, 5%-ish?
Got it. Thank you. And were you able to find numbers around the homicide clearance rates before and after?
So again, homicides, I don't know exactly what those are going to be. The homicide rates themselves are going to vary. Clearance rates are going to vary. To Chief's point from earlier, there's a 100% clearance rate from 2023. I can't tell you whether or not ALPR was used in the investigation or the conclusion, should I say, of those cases, because keep in mind that there could be a homicide that happened prior to the trial period, right? The investigation, however, revealed a license plate or some characteristic, color, make, model of a vehicle that the ALPR system was thereafter utilized in. So now fast forward to, of course, the case is still under investigation. Fast forward now to the time period where the trial period's going on. So there could be situations where the detectives had used ALPR to solve those cases. I don't have that information directly in front of me. But I can certainly tell you that, historically, the Austin Police Department has a very, very high percentage of solvability with respect to murders. I can't say the same is true for other types of criminal offenses. We still have a very high crime or clearance rate compared to other cities. It's just certainly not as high as it is for the homicides.
Great, thank you. And then second to last question. And I think there was a theme that's been kind of said on the dais, and Councilmember Lane had mentioned it right before turning it over, about trust and trust within the community. I think a lot of the speakers have kind of highlighted a lack of trust. But as it relates to ALPR data, there was a security breach around the database in the UK around ALPRs. The data was leaked and stolen off the dark web. So I guess my question is, what do we have in place? What safeguards does APD have in place to make sure we don't see a similar breach here in Austin?
So, sir, I can tell you that data security is of extreme importance to the city of Austin and the police department in particular. Obviously, there are state laws that require that we safeguard data in a way that ensures that we're in compliance with state law. Well, let's just take criminal justice information, commonly referred to as CJIS, as an example. We take every reasonable precaution we can, abiding by the standards set forth by NIST, National Institute for Standards Technology, department with a subdivision within Department of Commerce. We work very closely with Chief Security Office to ensure that what we're doing with data is, again, of sound practice. When the data is stored with different vendors, they too, to some extent, right, when I talked about FedRAMP compliance, SOC 2, SOC 3 compliance, all those different things I mentioned earlier, that's in their wheelhouse. And that gives us, as the end user, the peace of mind that we need to understand that they too are taking data security seriously. And so we rely upon, again, the industry standards, so to speak, to ensure that we have a level of comfort that can allow us to move forward. And keep in mind, these aren't decisions being made unilaterally by the police department, right? We work directly with Public Safety CTM. We work directly with the Chief Security Office to ensure that they too feel comfortable. As a matter of fact, one of the very first steps standing up new technology is a security review. That requires that the police department, and I've been through many of these, right? Police department fills out a questionnaire. Hey, what are you trying to do with this data? What's it going to capture? What's it going to contain? So on and so forth. And from that, they apply it to these NIST standards. I referred to NIST earlier. NIST standards, and there's a pretty lengthy manual that you take these requirements and you lay them against. And you do that because, again, you're trying to utilize the most secure, up-to-date standards to ensure that the data is being secured in a way that gives us comfort and holds vendors accountable. So sorry for the lengthy answer, but that's it.
No, I appreciate it. You know, I don't want to speak for everyone on the dais, but I think the general feel that I have is that a lot of the concerns aren't necessarily what's going to, how it's going to be used locally, but external forces that might come. And, I know I had asked earlier on about NOVA, and I know that's not a feature that we've had any discussions with. APD has had discussions with, and it's not something that we would use. But I just kind of want to get almost a confirmation that we might not use the feature, but is there any there's nothing that we can do if we're subpoenaed by ICE and they're using the system. Is that right?
I'm sorry, you're asking, your question is about subpoenas?
Yeah, if we're subpoenaed by ICE, there's nothing we would have to give up.
Sir, if the Austin Police Department receives legal process in general, we are going to consult with city legal to ensure that we are in compliance with what the order from whatever court may have issued that legal process is telling us. To the extent that we can push back, in the event that we can, we will. We understand, again, the importance of this with respect to our community, our concerns, your concerns, the council's concerns in general. And so, again, to the extent we can push back, we will. But if legal process comes, there is a situation or scenario where, yes, in fact, a judge is telling us to do something, we may have to do it.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, I doubt you have this data on you just because I just thought of it, but how many instances have we seen local governments be subpoenaed by ICE and been able to successfully push back?
Sir, I'm unaware of the city of Austin receiving anything.
Yeah, I'm not asking, I'm just saying in general.
I don't know, sir.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We'll now have Councilmember Duchin, and then we'll have Councilmember Siegel to close.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Chiefs, for the presentation. Like the others, I might start with a very small story and/or preamble. I think this was really part of the presentation regarding your stories, Chief Askew, of people that you've already, it sounds like, identified with ALPR that went on to commit, or maybe we prevented from committing multiple felonies or Class A misdemeanor offenses. I'm not sure if I'm the only immigrant here on the dais, and so there's a part of me that's incredibly sensitive to a lot of the feedback and concerns that we've heard today from constituents. But there's a specific story in my journey, my family's journey from coming to the States in the 1980s. We came on an H-1B visa, and one of the first things that we experienced was the person that was sponsoring the visa using that to not pay my dad. And so, or threaten, obviously, you can infer what those threats meant. And then we discovered years later, this same person that I would characterize as a bad actor was arrested, we read in the paper, for drugging women across state lines. And it just makes me think now, it reinforces that I do think there are consequences for us not solving crimes. There are consequences to people not being served justice. And if we had figured out some way, and I don't know if ALPR would have made a difference in that case or not, but if we had figured out a way decades ago to find a way to bring that person to justice, then I wonder how many people might not have been subjected to what he later did. The other thing I just want to touch on is I've also worked in the technology world for over a decade, specifically actually in the data space. As have been described today by others, I've had issues with vendors. And the key thing I really want to take away is, even though it sounds like perhaps a lot of our issues may be with Flock, I do want to be careful of distinguishing between this ALPR pilot and the specific vendor that we're using. And there are, from my experience, a dozen vendors in this space, and certainly one option that would be, I would think, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater would be to find a different vendor that might be more responsible or might address some of the concerns we've heard from the council and constituents. And so finally, kind of on that point, I really am hopeful that we can look at this resolution, which calls for extending this pilot and also investing in safeguards from this sort of cost-benefit analysis where we can focus on who has it already helped us bring to justice versus these sort of risks that we've identified and hypotheticals. That is to say, what we've already gained or stand to gain by hopefully adding safeguards and continuing this program versus what we may be at risk of losing based on some of our concerns about everything from the federal government to specific vendors. We're using this to identify a certain kind of serious crime and bring people to justice, and our own audit department, from what I read in the audit, concludes that we've generally complied with the use of this technology and that they've identified some shortcomings and they've made recommendations, and it sounds like you've already taken some steps to try and address those deficiencies. And though I've got some questions about the timeline of some of those that weren't specific, I think the thing I'm really thinking about is if we abandon this, it feels to me like we're really saying, as what I think of as a sophisticated city that's aspiring to be technologically responsible, aspiring to be technologically effective, that somehow we're incapable of making this work, even though I think we've done this with several other surveillance tools that we've deployed in downtown and in parks and have produced results. So my questions are kind of along those lines. My first question is, in your view, has APD experienced more success using the ALPR technology through patrol officers or investigators of violent crimes or other tools versus using this tool? Maybe you can explain to me where this stacks up regarding efficacy of helping us solve crimes.
Yes, sir, and thank you for that opportunity. Just simply because of the mobile ALPR systems that we have in our patrol vehicles, it's a known that our patrol officers are utilizing ALPR systems a lot more frequently. So as our patrol officers are driving around town, the automated license plate reader system is obviously scanning license plates pretty regularly, and in the process of doing so, identifying license plates that have warrants attached to them. So that's the way, in fact, that the patrol is using them. Shifting now to the way investigators are using them is quite different. Again, depending on the unit that the investigator is assigned to, whether it's homicide or robbery, aggravated assault, sex crimes case, those investigators are actually investigating criminal acts that have been perpetrated, obviously, against citizens in our community. And they are using the ALPR system to do research to determine if they can identify a suspect vehicle. And in some cases, they use the ALPR system to add a license plate to what's called a hot list. In other words, if they've identified the suspect. Now, the reason I broke those down the way I did is because I think it's important to understand that both units, if you will, right, patrol officers versus investigators, are drastically successful with the ALPR system. But to compare those two on their face as being equal, I think is where we need to be careful. Because I certainly disagree with the idea and the concept that a stolen vehicle as is impactful as the killing of a person, by comparison. So I think it's important to understand the distinction between the two. They're both very successful, but again, I would qualify it by saying that.
Well, maybe I can be more specific. You touched on a couple examples where you had arrested people in 2 hours or 6 hours. Is that basically much more difficult without this tool? What would you have done without this tool? What does that look like? What's the value add for bringing this tool into those cases?
Absolutely. And sir, that was one case that I talked about, the 2-hour case. There's the other case I talked about in the presentation where the individuals were caught by Kerr County Sheriff's Office, and that was about a 6-hour turnaround. So, the examples just continue to pile up where we've utilized ALPR to drastically decrease the amount of time that it takes for officers to actually utilize the system and effect an arrest and stop them. And I'd be remiss by not mentioning the financial impact that is brought to bear for the police department in this city when we don't allow for our cops to operate with technology that makes them more efficient, more effective. When a murder happens, we typically throw a lot of resources at that. And the reason we do is because we understand the gravity of that crime. So we'll have officers, patrol officers that respond that will stay for the majority of the on-scene investigation that could last hours. We obviously have multiple detectives that will respond. We'll have a supervisor that responds. In many cases, we have tactical intelligence unit officers that respond. There's people that respond to do video canvases. I mean, we're talking 10, in some cases 15 people could respond to these particular events. And when you start talking about how long they're investigating, I mean, obviously that's a moving target, right? But let's just use an example of, let's say 10 officers. Let's say that those 10 officers investigated for 10 hours per day for a total of 2 days, right? 20 hours. If their average rate of pay is $50 an hour, well, that's a $10,000 cost associated with the initial response and investigation to that particular murder. Now, by way of comparison, let's look back at the example of the 2 hour solvability, right? Under that same example, if we had 10 officers respond, and they only investigated for 2 hours, by which time we found the suspect and apprehended and put them in jail, well, by my math, that's about a $9,000 savings. So there is certainly there's certainly benefits with respect to preventing these folks from going out and committing more crimes, right? We talked about that. But there's also a financial impact to the overall police department, the overall city, when we start talking about the deployment and use of ALPR technology.
Thank you. I know we heard some similar questions from Councilmember Quadri and others, but I want to just clarify, at this moment anyway, after a year-long pilot, has APD shared any data with ICE or any immigration-related entity that's seeking that data?
So the answer is absolutely not. We have not shared any data with ICE or any other immigration entity. As I talked about earlier, the police department has very robust processes and procedures in place to ensure that we're in line with the resolution, and that's our focus. So I'll be completely honest with you. This police department doesn't care what the immigration status is. What we care about is getting justice for our victims, the victims of crime in this city. That's our priority. It always has been and it always will be.
Thank you. Can you, I know you touched on the presentation, but can you expand on what, I think the term you used was personally identifiable information, as opposed to, say, the anonymized data that some systems may be collecting?
Yes, sir. And so personally identifiable information, the definition that I use is the one that's provided by NIST, and I mentioned NIST earlier. Again, it's a department within the Department of Commerce that again, the Austin Police Department, as well as the City of Austin as a whole, commonly uses their guidelines when we're screening technology. And I'm just going to give you this broadly. Personal identifiable information is information that could be used to identify a person, right? So when we start talking about PII, as it's commonly referred to, if you had someone's social security number, or if you had someone's date of birth or a maiden name or something like that, on its face, that's clearly going to be PII. As we start to dive deeper into the discussion as it pertains to ALPR, there's a stretch. There's a stretch there because PII indicates that you're going to be able to identify somebody. Well, a license plate's a series of numbers and letters. It certainly doesn't identify anybody, and without TLETs, the system by which license plates are run, you can't get the name of the person that's registered to that vehicle. To expand on that, even if you had the name of the registered owner of that particular vehicle, you wouldn't necessarily know who was driving that vehicle, and you certainly wouldn't know immigration status or anything of the such, even if you had access to, which in this case, obviously, Flock does not have. They don't have TLETs access. So as we're talking about PII, a license plate is not PII, in my opinion. There was a 2018 case that came out of Virginia where this very topic was brought, and actually in knowing what the conversation devolved into at the Audit Finance Committee, I jotted some notes down here, and I'd like to just read it so I stay on point. In 2018, there was a case in Virginia. The court stated that a license plate number is not considered personal information because it does not inherently describe location or index anything about an individual. Without a connection linking the license plate to a person, it is simply a combination of letters and numbers, which I mentioned earlier, without identifying information. Additionally, unlike Social Security numbers or driver's license number, which is assigned to a specific individual, a license plate number is assigned to a vehicle. And may identify multiple individuals. So as an example, if you and your wife own a vehicle, then you and your wife would be on the registration. So it's not identifying, again, the person that's driving or occupying that vehicle. It's simply the registration back to the person. So that's how I would answer the question, sir. I'm happy to expand if you have further.
Okay. No, I appreciate the explanation. I'm sure by now you've read the account from a week or two ago, or the 404 Media article that talked about some of the data sharing that was going on in Illinois. It suggests that ICE has access to ALPR data, Flock ALPR data. So can you help me understand how APD's data would not be shared in a similar capacity as what happened in Illinois?
Yes, sir. And what I would like to do is just for those of you who haven't read the 404 Media article that's floating about, the 404 Media article talks specifically about how some agencies throughout the country are using ALPR data and sharing ALPR data with ICE and others willingly. And I think that's the big takeaway here, is the fact that, look, there are police departments throughout this nation police communities who are allowing them to do the very things that our community does not want us to do. They are not operating in a space that provides guardrails to prevent this sort of conduct. And as a result, that's exactly where we find ourselves, is in a space where the Austin Police Department, again, not being concerned about someone's immigration status, rather whether or not they were the victim of a crime, these types of articles are being used against the Austin Police Department when they don't apply to what we're doing. We're not doing that stuff. We're not sharing our data. We have a very robust screening process, which I talked about earlier, that ensures that we aren't sharing data to people that don't have a legitimate need to have the data. So I would push back saying that the article that's written by 404 Media could certainly be applicable to police departments and cities outside of Austin, Texas, but they certainly don't apply to APD.
Okay, thank you for helping clarify that. I know you touched on some costs earlier in terms of trying to help us step through the cost of using the system to solve a case versus not. What is the total cost of the pilot to date?
So as of right now, the Flock contract, it's $114,000 is what the 1 year trial program costs the Austin Police Department.
What about the other cameras, the Axon cameras?
So the Axon camera system is embedded in the fleet contract, and when we purchased the fleet contract, they were offering a deal where we would get what's called Axon Respond, and I mentioned that earlier, giving the supervisors the ability to review critical incidents and pursuits and things like that. We saw a tremendous value in that because we want our officers and supervisors to be informed with facts so that they can, again, manage critical situations and incidents rapidly evolving with real-time information. So we bought that bundle that included this Respond, and as a result, the Axon Corporation gave us the Fleet 3 functionality.
So total cost is $114,000 for everything right now that we've deployed.
Yes, sir.
And Chief Davis, total APD budget roughly $500 million.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is a fraction of a percent of
That's right.
the budget.
For what it does, yes.
I'm going to switch gears real quick. I'm going to read a quote from the ACLU on this topic, and I'd like to get your perspective on whether you agree with it. And if so, help me understand what guardrails are in place if somebody's rights were to be violated going forward in a capacity that we've heard about this morning. The quote is, "We don't find every use of ALPRs objectionable. For example, we do not generally object to using them to check license plates against lists of stolen cars, for Amber Alerts, for toll collection, provided they are deployed and used fairly and subject to proper checks and balances, such as ensuring devices are not disproportionately deployed in low-income communities and communities of color, and that the quote-unquote hot lists they are run against are legitimate and up-to-date. But there's no reason the technology should be used to create comprehensive records of everybody's comings and goings." Can you say whether or not that's something you abide by? And if so, assuming we ran into a problem like what we've talked about this morning, you've heard from constituents, how would we approach making sure that going forward nobody's rights are violated?
Sir, I'm a citizen of this great nation, and I couldn't agree more that your amendment rights are sacred and should be protected. I also certainly believe that the police department utilizing technology has to make sure, or we have to make sure as we deploy this technology, that it doesn't infringe upon those rights. So with respect to the assertion that we're tracking people and collecting data, sir, quite frankly, I think people are giving us too much credit. We don't have the bandwidth to track people. We are keeping data for a 7-day period, after which time it falls off. We definitely do not have a team of people or even a single person that's sitting idly by tracking the daily movements of anyone. Again, we have a full-time job trying to get justice for the victims in our community, and that's what we're dedicated to doing. We're certainly not interested in violating anyone's rights. And in any situation where that's happened, I would please like to know about it so that we can quickly address that issue.
Yeah, and sir, I agree as well with the statement from the ACLU. It is important to remember that the only time we are going in to look at this data, and certainly from the investigator's standpoint, is when a crime has been committed, and it is zeroing in on a location, on a time specific. So we are not there's not someone sitting there randomly going through this data, randomly going through the license plate, the LPR, and looking for things. That is not happening. That will not happen.
Thank you, Chief. Just to build on your point then, so you ran through a number of solutions that you're currently implementing that the audit recommended. Some of them just say currently implementing. Some of them had specific dates on them. I'm just curious if you can speak to, generally speaking, when we can expect those things that say currently implementing to be implemented.
Sir, my answer would be as quickly as we possibly can. Some of those issues deal with working directly with vendors. So we're beholden to, obviously, the vendors to make sure that those changes get incorporated. And I'll give you an example. Reason and incident number are two fields that the Austin Police Department wants to see incorporated into its search fields, or its search. And so working with the vendors to get that done, obviously, it takes time. And then with respect to building out a guide, right? I talked earlier about how we want to make sure there's a seamless transition between an outgoing employee, say at risk management, versus, compared to the new person coming in to take their place. We want to make sure that document is clear, concise, and encompasses all the things that need to be in it, so that we don't misstep. And so we created that document. We've bounced it off of a couple people, up to and including the auditor. I mean, they were with us lockstep with respect to the audit, so we realize they have a different perspective. So it's the collaboration, it's the working, not only collaboration internally within other city departments, but also collaboration with the vendors to make some of those things a reality. And so that's the reason why some of them say they're being implemented.
Thank you. I've got, I think, just two more questions. One is, when I ran the numbers based on the audit report, it looks like our prosecution rate is hovering around 80% relative to the prosecutions versus arrests made with the technology. But I'm hoping you have some context for that, or can point me in the direction of somebody that does help me understand what would be the typical prosecution rate be for similar felonies or Class A misdemeanors. Is that something you guys can provide? Obviously not right now, but in the next, hopefully, couple of days.
Yes, sir. I just want to be clear on your question. You're saying 8% clearance or 8% 80% prosecution rate with respect to those cases built with ALPR. You're asking for a comparison of those not using ALPR?
Or what the typical rate would be overall, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have that information, sir, and I'd have to get back to you on it.
I guess the main question, is it possible to get that information?
I certainly believe the data exists. It's a deep dive into the data.
Okay, I will follow up on that one.
Yes, sir.
And the last thing you mentioned during your presentation that struck me was you said folks are coming here to commit crimes. I'm sure we don't have time to unpack that this morning. But same point, I'd be very curious to know if you've got some data that can help me understand the extent of that, this phenomenon, and help me understand how often that is occurring and maybe why, the underlying reasons why. Is that something you can help work on beyond this work session also?
Most certainly, sir. I don't have that data in front of me, but we can certainly work together.
Okay, I look forward to it. Thanks so much for your answers.
Thank you.
Councilmember, before I recognize Councilmember Siegel, it's my understanding that Councilmember Bell has a quick question he has for staff.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. Throughout this debate, and I've asked it a couple of times, and I was just wondering if the police department, I don't know if the auditors, oh yeah, they are still here, but to what extent is this information, is the ALPR data already available in the private sector? And that's kind of a conversation that we've kind of continued to have, because my, again, anecdotal understanding is that virtually every bank drive-through, gas station, basically any time a vehicle drives into a commercial establishment for some kind of service, there is an ALPR camera picking up the data, and they're using this for marketing purposes. These are conversations that I've had around this, but I don't have any kind of confirmation of that's the case. I've also understood the HOAs can put up ALPRs and do put up ALPRs. Do y'all have any sense of, in other words, we're talking about APD and the data that we're collecting and the 7-day retention rate. How much of this data is already commercially available out there from different stores and different locations? And for that matter, I was thinking the Teslas, they have the cameras that are kind of constantly watching around them. Are they picking up ALPR data in the same way that the APD Axon cruisers are? Because we're having this kind of one conversation here about this tiny little slice of what APD is collecting, but we're not really looking at the bigger picture of, this all may kind of be a moot conversation in the sense that all this data is already available out there with no deletion or requirements, and from my understanding, no federal or state law governing the use of it, the maintenance of it, anything like that. Do y'all have any sense of that?
Well, yes, sir, you are correct. There are many businesses, as well as, to your point, HOAs and things of that nature that currently have ALPR cameras on their property. Shopping malls, as an example, the Domain, as an example, many gas stations. So yes, you're 100% correct. These ALPR cameras are a lot more common than people think, and yes, they exist. And with respect to the Teslas, I don't think that they're doing it. Keep in mind that the actual software, right, is only taking a picture of the license plate. There is no direct tie back to TLETs. So there's no way for a private business to take a picture and then run that vehicle. Now, there could be some sort of paid feature functionality on the back end, right? But that's not a common thing. They're taking it in the event, to your point, if they want to market a certain product, market like something. They're also doing it in the event that they're a victim of a crime or something along those lines. But yes, to your point, they're very common, and they're being stood up and multiplied regularly.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, too, to your point, there's not a grocery store that you pull into, there is not a bank you go into that is not capturing this data. Every single person in this room, their data, if you order something on Amazon, there's your data. It is out there. And to your point, yes, that is absolutely true.
I appreciate that. And I don't know if the auditor has anything to add to that. And I'm seeing them shake their head no. But again, I'm just trying to understand because, the APD runs this pilot program for a year and collected about, I think, 75 million or so kind of scans, right? And those are going to be duplicates and there's a lot of kind of wiggle room in that number. But how does that compare to the private sector is my kind of, that's what I'm trying to understand because, for example, if there's, 75 million scans in the private sector, again, then this kind of whole conversation is really, all for naught in the sense of that data is already out there, already accessible to ICE, to, whoever wants to get it. But I just haven't been able to get a firm answer on, how much ALPR data is out there and how accessible is it. I just get little peeks into it. I wish we had a comprehensive kind of understanding of that because it really changes this entire.
It does. And I think to your point, if you have a bad actor, you have someone that wants to give that data over, they could. You have a business owner that wants to, work in that capacity, they could.
Yeah, and my understanding is that they're collecting this and then, oftentimes reselling that data to the data brokers, and then it's kind of, sitting there available for, whoever, needs it, wants it, purchases it. So, okay, well, I just wanted to check on that. That's a really important, outstanding question that I have that I still don't have any real answers or insight to, and I think, honestly, we need to understand that before we can move forward with our program.
Thank you, Councilmember Vela. Now we'll have Councilmember Siegel to close.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and really thanks to my colleagues for this great discussion and this work session. Chief and Assistant Chief, thank you for being here. I'm not going to address any questions to y'all, so you can return to your seats if that's okay. And I want to thank the auditor as well for all of your work to really bring this to bear. I'm going to present a little presentation here that's mainly for the public and my colleagues. I wanted to make sure I listened to all the questions and answers to make sure I could stand on all the slides that are here. And I think everything here holds up. And so, and they even gave me a little clicker here. I feel very special. Thanks, y'all. So what we've learned from the ALPR pilot program, we heard from a lot of speakers today that we're in a new political reality. And I do want to acknowledge all of the work that the prior council did to impose guardrails starting in 2023 to make sure this program is as intentional and consistent with Austin values as possible. But I think what we're hearing from the community and from the news cycle is that this is a new political reality. When Mayor Adler was here in September 22, he was quoted in the context of the LPR conversation saying that we think it's probably unlikely that requests from ICE would be made of us, right? And we know that's not the case in 2025. We have this report that ICE taps into the nationwide AI-enabled camera network that Flock contributes to. And I'll share with you later, but the contract, even the amended contract we could potentially enter into with Flock would not prevent Austin's data from being used in a network like this. We've heard a little testimony today about how a Texas police officer used the ALPR system to look nationwide for a woman who was looking for an abortion. We have the New York Times talking about how the president is using obscure laws, ICE agents, and fear to crack down on dissent. So I don't want to be too heavy-handed here, but I think all of us are aware of the current political context. This is an article from just last week that the president's administration is hiring Palantir to create a master database on every American. Palantir is a company that's co-owned by Peter Thiel, who's one of the owners of Flock. So this is unprecedented levels of surveillance. One of the things I want to clear up here is what an ALPR actually does. During the September 22 meeting, Councilmember Vela asked then Chief Chacon if photographs were being taken. And the answer was no, that it's just a scan. There's no photos that are actually stored. And so I have a short video that I'd ask our city staff to play. This is Flock itself talking about the footage, not just the scans that are being gathered.
We make it really easy for you to pull footage in the event that a crime occurs. Because our solution is web-based, any authorized user can log in from a device that has internet access. Once inside the portal, you simply use our robust filtering features to either filter on date, time, vehicle act.
Almost perfect.
Or even partial plate number to get right down to the evidence you need in a few clicks. Armed with Flock footage, law enforcement now has the actionable evidence they need to solve crime. Flock cameras can be installed just about anywhere.
I think that might be the end of that one. So it's not just a scan, it's footage. And
We
then,
make it really easy.
and so I just wanted to share the next slide as well. If you would play this as well, thank you.
So a Flock Safety license plate reading camera is a camera that takes pictures of all traffic in front of the camera, but our cameras go the extra step and look for identifying features like color of the vehicle, type of vehicle, make of vehicle, state of the license plate. And these identified features, which we call vehicle fingerprint, help our police customers quickly sort through thousands and thousands of vehicles to find the ones that they need to solve crime. So a Flock Safety license.
So this is the vehicle fingerprint technology, and the PowerPoint that we've posted to back up has the links for all of this. But basically, the Flock system enables Flock, through its AI approach, to search for vehicles even without a license plate because of the footage that they're processing. These are just some screenshots that you can look at later, but it shows how this is Flock's own materials that you can search by decals, roof racks, bumper stickers, and then track the direction of travel. And so this is a ton of data that Flock is gathering. Our policy attempts to regulate how Flock uses this data, right? This is from the general order from our police department that ALPR data shall not be distributed, sold, or transferred to any non-law enforcement entities. These are some of the safeguards that were the result of the council resolution. Unfortunately, Flock can access Austin's ALPR data, and it's able to use this data for a variety of purposes outside the scope of our policy. Our contract actually allows this. This is an unfortunate thing where I believe our law department did a strong job of advocating for a contract that would fully include and incorporate the resolution adopted by City Council. But this flaw has been in the contract since it was executed in 2023. This is the language of the contract, and I want to read this because this is still not fixed, even with the proposed amendment that the police department has offered us. We heard some of our members of the public cite to this, that the agency, which is the City of Austin, would grant to Flock a non-exclusive, perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, royalty-free, fully paid license to use, reproduce, modify, and distribute the agency data as a part of the aggregated data. So once Flock has access to this, they can basically use it for any of their commercial purposes. Now, we've attempted to modify the definition of aggregated data, and Flock itself says aggregated data is compiled anonymous data, which has been stripped of personal identifying information. And this is something I brought up in Audit and Finance. Flock does not believe that any of these scanned information is PII, or personally identifiable. Their legal theory is that because it's captured in public, it's not private information. It's not PII. And so you can see it in the slide how they, in different parts of their policies and public statements, make this extremely clear that they don't consider anything they gather as PII. And so we're not so much talking about the police department tracking people's movements. It's Flock creating this database over the course of the 12-month cycle, as we heard from the updated audit report, over 100 million scans. And so as the executive director of Grassroots Leadership shared, they can literally build a profile of our movements based on all these scans that are occurring. This is obviously extremely valuable data. No one will be surprised to know. Flock is valued at over $7 billion as a corporation because of their ability to aggregate all of this data. This is a slide I won't go fully into, but we know that Flock also acquires stolen data to enhance their products, even data that was originally hacked. And their whole thing is this theory of jumping from LPR to person. And that's where they can use things like a marriage license, a vehicle registration, to not just focus on the vehicle, but on the people themselves. Now, I don't want to overemphasize that Flock is the only bad actor in this space. There's a lot of articles that are cited in this slide that show other ALPR countries across the country have similar problems. And the last point here is basically focused on the guardrails. And this is where we're not, and I'll just speak for myself, it's not any sort of criticism of the police department. But the way this contract and the way these relationships work with Flock's equipment, our guardrails are not protective. And I think one of the most important pieces of information my office got was from the assistant chief earlier this week. Our own police manual directs that officers should document the reason for their inquiry when they search the ALPR system. That's on this slide here. And the next slide shows that in the period that we've studied, during the audit cycle, over 11,000 APD searches of the Flock system violated the general order of the police department. And this is the information we got from the assistant chief. This is the table here. And there's actually already an Austin Chronicle article about it. But if you look at just the last quarter, Q1 2025, over 20% of the searches by our own officers of this Flock system did not have a reason that was compliant with the council resolution. So I think this shows that despite best efforts, despite good faith, that we can't trust Flock with our data, that under the even amended contract that's being proposed, they will still have, within this window, the ability to feed all of our data into their AI system and use it for all of their products across the country. And we also know that the police department thought when they came to us in March to present the results of the audit, they thought there were 0 data sharing requests. Now we know there's been at least 9 since the program was restarted. And we also know that despite orders in the police manual directing officers how to use the system, that basically 20% of officers using the system in the last quarter used it in a way that contradicts city policy. So with that, I'll close, Mayor Pro Tem, and I would ask this council to discontinue the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Siegel. Colleagues, any other discussion on the LPR item? Yes, Councilmember Harper-Madison.
Super brief. I'm sorry. I was trying to. I didn't even consider that you're not sitting where the mayor sits, so you can't see the hands being raised. My apologies. Yeah, that was something that I wanted to make sure to just go back and put some emphasis on. It was when folks were having this discussion, one of the things that really resonated with me during the course of the discussion was, I guess it was 2 things. But the first one was when we were talking about, sorry, somebody used a name and now it's lost on me. But when we were talking about, I was trying to quantify the harm, the potential for harm, and trying to quantify what it is that we're attempting to achieve. I appreciate what it is that we're attempting to achieve: crime reduction and public safety. You know, the desire to achieve that is not lost on me. I think the thing that still keeps coming back to me is USAA has had a data breach where my account information was made available to the public. My HIPAA information by way of Blue Cross Blue Shield, Truist Mortgage, everything that has my Social Security and every other delineating piece of personal information about me by the most secure structures and infrastructure has been breached. I think we'd be remiss to even approach this discussion by saying that even really good stewards, I understand the desire is to be a good steward. I think any assumption about protection of information is really naive. I don't think we have the ability to tell the general public that we're going to be good stewards of their information if every major system can be breached. I don't have any trust that the city of Austin or any entity within our structure, I mean, just watching us come really, frankly, getting compromised. As a municipality, we've been compromised with our data. I don't trust it. And so there's that concern. But then the other thing that I really wanted to touch on was, one, you know, we can't offer people guarantees around protecting your information. I personally am not putting my name on that. If anybody's doing that, I did not say that. The other thing I really wanted to touch base on was what it is that people are expressing concerns about. I hear the sentiment around what it is that we're hoping to achieve. And I think during the course of the discussion, what gets lost and where it starts looking like different jerseys as opposed to same jersey, same team, we all ultimately care about the overall quality of life for the people that live around us, the people we go to school with, go to church with. You know, I think at the end of the day, we all want that same thing, but the manifestation of having a member of your family be removed from your country and taken to a country they've never been to, I think when we say, of course we're not perfect, there will be that collateral damage, there will be those mistakes. I don't want to make people mistakes. And that's, I think, ultimately the point that I was able to really solidify how to articulate it in my head now. I don't want to make people mistakes. I think there will be mistakes with technology, with the use of people's data, and I don't want to be responsible for making people mistakes. And that's what it was that I was trying to convey earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. And City Manager Broadnax.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you, Councilmember Siegel, for your presentation. I wanted to at least request that the chief and/or assistant chief ask you have an opportunity to respond to Councilmember Siegel's presentation, particularly on some clarifying points, if they had any. Chief?
Yes, sir, I do. Councilmember Siegel, can you pull up your presentation, please, sir? To slide, I believe it was 3. So on this particular slide, and I believe it was the following slide, and I'm paraphrasing, sir, so please correct me if I'm wrong. I thought I understood you to say that our information was in fact shared with ICE, and I just want to reiterate the point that our information was not shared with ICE at any point during the trial period or the extension of the trial period.
Assistant Chief, can I interrupt you? Because we don't actually know, right? Isn't it true that Flock has this data and we don't get a notification if Flock shares it with one of their other customers?
So, sir, they maintain our data for 7 days, the agency data, after which point in time it falls off. They don't.
You're missing section 4.2 where they get to keep the aggregated data.
4.2 is the agency data. 4.4 is the aggregated data.
No, 4.2 says they can keep the aggregated data, which is stripped of personally identifiable information, but they don't consider the information captured in public to be PII.
And sir, if I could, 4.2 of the contract is agency data specifically. They hold agency data for a period of 7 days, at which point in time that information and data is deleted.
No,
Shifting
but
now.
during those 7 days, they can then incorporate it into their AI system. So yes, it falls off after 7 days, but as long as they use it during those 7 days, it's theirs forever.
So we're now moving into 4.4. The aggregated data is completely anonymized. So with respect to Flock or anyone else that might get the data thereafter, let's assume that they did share that data, they wouldn't know anything about where that photo was taken or anything about that particular license plate, the date it was taken, the location it was taken, the city it was taken. It would literally be a picture of the Texas license plate that could be in any of the cities across this state.
Well, that's not my interpretation of the contract, and that's not what the auditor has said, that's not what the lawyers have said. And so you're up here interpreting a contract and contradicting its express terms.
Sir, I believe that the contract, if Flock were to use our data, I believe that the city of Austin, through its legal department, would be able to take any sort of action that was within the scope of that contract. In other words, if they violated that contract, then I think we would have the ability to hold them accountable. And I'm not sure what that would look like, but I certainly believe that the citizens of this great city would support that. I would support that. If Flock were doing something that they were not supposed to be doing, in other words, sharing our data with ICE, I would stand with everyone who is opposed to this particular technology, and let's hold them accountable.
Well, I'd like to say, too, that we are not married to this technology. I mean, Flock does not have to be the vendor we go to. We can find a vendor that we feel is more responsible or we like the process better. We are not married to the system of Flock. And so I'll just close, and thank you, sir, for allowing me to do this. But there's not one district that I have not been in where I've talked to people, I've talked to Hispanic citizens about their fear and what this looks like for them. And so I take this very seriously that we're here. But I do feel that there is a way to do this and to do it in a way that we can be successful and have a program here as a large city that addresses violent crime. We can do both and keep citizens close. The greatest dangers in this city are the people within it. You all stood up there with me at the synagogue, last week, where we all talked about what we need to do to address crimes to synagogues, crimes to mosques, all of those things that are internal to this city, people that are perpetrating all these crimes on the more vulnerable. And that includes the Hispanic community. This is a tool that we can use to do that, and we can be responsible with it. And again, that does not have to be Flock. It can be another place that we find that we do feel is more responsible. And I'm totally open to that.
I'm sorry, Chief. And Mayor Pro Tem, if I could just ask for slide 17 to be put back up, because this was just to complete the point I was making. The contract we have under the resolution that this council adopted gave Flock a non-exclusive, perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, royalty-free, fully paid license to use, reproduce, modify, and distribute the agency data. And so there's no legal action against Flock because the contract gives them permission to use this data. And so that was just the point I want to make. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Colleagues, anything else on this topic? I know our city attorney is working on an assessment of the exchange that we just had here, and will get back to us on their assessment. All right, we are going to take a little recess for 30 minutes so that folks can go grab lunch and take a break, and then we'll come back in 30 minutes, so let's say 12:45. We'll be back here on the dais, and we'll have a briefing on the update to the